At night, after Yimo sent Yunbing and Tingting back, he went straight to Han Zixin. However, Yunbing twisted and turned unable to fall asleep. She knew that as soon as the day was bright, she and Tingting would go back to Ninghai. She would no longer have the chance to be with Yimo anymore. Perhaps tonight was the last night she would stay together with Yimo. At night, after Yimo sent Yunbing and Tingting back, he went straight to Han Zixin. However, Yunbing twisted and turned unable to fall asleep. She knew that as soon as the day was bright, she and Tingting would go back to Ninghai. She would no longer have the chance to be with Yimo anymore. Perhaps tonight was the last night she would stay together with Yimo. The more she thought, the more she regretted running away from Yimo's room. However, she felt too hard to summon the courage to go again. She knew if she didn't take the initiative, Yimo wouldn't come for her. Sometimes, she felt she was a bad woman, but she knew that in the depth of her heart, what she was thinking wasn't completely to repay Yimo. It was because she really wanted to be together with Yimo even if it was just for one night. She was afraid Yimo would think she was trying to use him. But she knew that she really didn't think that way. Yunbing had made up her mind, after Yimo comes back to sleep, she would go to his room again. Although it was a bit shameless, she would still do it for Yimo. At around 10 p.m., Yimo still hadn't come back, but Yunbing was almost about to fall asleep. Finally, the door sounded. The sleepy Yunbing immediately sat up in nervousness, but she heard the knocking sound from her own room. Her heart was raised. Was Yimo coming over to her? How could this be? Tingting was still sleeping. Thinking about this, Yunbing wanted to get off the bed and look. But at this moment, the lights were turned on. Yunbing was dumbfounded. The person who came in wasn't Yimo but a girl. She still had a bag in her hands, so she realized it was probably Yiling. Yiling knew Yimo was at Beijing and no longer had the mood to play in America. She came back by herself first but didn't expect to see Yunbing when she opened her room and froze. "You are Yiling?" Yunbing said. Yiling nodded and asked, "You are?" "I'm Yunbing, Yimo's English teacher," Yunbing quickly explained but felt relieved and disappointed at the same time. She didn't have the courage to go to Yimo's room anymore. Now that Yiling was back, she couldn't even if she wanted to. "You are Mrs. Yunbing, I've heard my brother talk about you," Yiling said in surprise. Yimo said Yunbing saved his life before, but now it seemed there was some relationship between them. She immediately saw Tingting and was shocked. Yimo didn't tell her Yunbing had a child and she was so old already. In that case, she was obviously not suitable with her brother. Seeing Yiling look at Tingting, Yunbing quickly explained what happened from Hong Kong till now. "My brother went out." Yiling thought Yimo was asleep. As though knowing Yimo would come at night, Han Zixin had prepared tea and snacks. But even so, when Yimo actually came, Han Zixin felt relieved. He didn't have any way if Yimo didn't come because his phone was always off. Yimo saw that other than Elder Han and Han Yang, there was also another man in his 50s. Han Zixin was very polite to Yimo. Seeing him come in, he quickly stood up. "Yimo, this is the military laboratories Li Xiong." "Old Li, this is Yimo I told you about." Han Zixin just introduced the two but didn't say Li Xiong's position. Li Xiong also nodded to Yimo. In his eyes, although Yimo was strong, he was still young. For someone in high status like them, they only needed to be nice and Yimo would be extremely grateful. And, it seemed pretty easy to use Yimo this time. Thus, he didn't understand why Han Zixin took Yimo so seriously. In his impression, Yimo was a simple-minded but strong youth. Yimo didn't care seeing that Li Xiong seemed to be a little rude. He couldn't even be bothered to nod. To him, there was no point in getting close with such a person. Their pursuits were different. It was just a deal between him and Han Zixin. Seeing that Yimo couldn't even be bothered to nod, Li Xiong couldn't keep it together. However, he was in a high status for a long time and had some control. Han Zixin frowned thinking this old Li was good but just underestimated people. Seeing that Han Zixin wanted to ease up the tension, he waved his hand and sat down. "Elder Han, don't waste time, since this is a deal, just tell me what to do, I prefer to be straightforward." Han Zixin had some understanding of Yimo's personality and nodded. "In that case, I'll be straightforward. We researched the model you gave Li Hu carefully last time. It's an extremely valuable military secret. We originally thought it was just worth tens of millions, but by the looks of it now, that's only a minor fraction of it. Yi Mo immediately knew the mission was related to this, but he already gave the thing to Han Zixin. Why did they bring it up? Han Zixin continued, the conclusion we got is that this model is only a part of it. It's only the outer energy core part. The nucleus of the thing isn't there. Now that we know how important this data is, we can't have such precious thing in the hands of others. Although we don't know who invented this data, but it could be said to be a military milestone. Then, Han Zixin looked at Yi Mo. I think you should know, we want you to get back the remaining part. Regardless if our country can really create it, it's much better to have this in our hands than in others. You want me to find you this? Yi Mo frowned, when Dong gave this to him. Where would he find it? Han Zixin nodded seriously. Indeed, I think only you can find this. One reason is that you gave it to us, so you should know something about where it came from. The second is that normal people's power wouldn't be able to retrieve such a precious data, so I want you to go with Han Yang and find the remaining data. Li Xiong added timely, it's every citizen's responsibility to serve the country, so this is not only a mission but an honor. Yi Mo looked coldly at Li Xiong. Shut up, stop playing your games. Li Xiong's face immediately changed. He didn't understand Yi Mo, so he took out those big ideas he used to educate young people with. Of course, Han Zixin knew Yi Mo's personality. Even if Yi Mo knew his position, he would still be nothing in the eyes of Yi Mo. Yi Mo was someone who wouldn't get up early without benefit. It was useless to educate him with those big ideals. If he owed the country, then he would repay the debt himself. Yi Mo hated empty words. He quickly stopped Li Xiong, who was going to throw a tantrum. Old Li, Yi Mo is like that, don't be like that. Han Yang sat by the side saying nothing. It was completely irrelevant to her, but she looked coldly at Li Xiong. It seemed she also despised him. Han Zixin's payment of 1 block of green silver sand should be enough. In Yi Mo's heart, that was worth countless times more than that military model. However, only he knew the worth of the green silver sand. As such, Yi Mo knew Han Zixin's reward was enough, but Han Zixin didn't. Seeing Yi Mo not talk, Han Zixin was afraid Yi Mo would regret and quickly said, the next batch of material is coming in 3 months, then I'll let you pick 10 more. Yi Mo waved his hand and said, I agree to this. I'll try, regardless of whether I succeed or not, I won't return the green silver sand. Yi Mo was not interested at all in picking 10 more. If he could pick out 5 or 6 things, he would already be happy. There wouldn't be that much good materials for him to pick anyway. Okay, you and Yang can start tomorrow. Han Zixin stood up in joy. Then he turned to Han Yang and said, Yang no matter what, safety first, okay? However, Yi Mo said, no need, I'll go by myself, it's cumbersome to have an extra person. Yi Mo, I admit you're strong, but if you think you can beat me for sure, you're wrong. Otherwise, let's fight first. Han Yang was discomforted by Yi Mo's words. No need to fight, I'll let you come with me. Looking at the way Han Yang jumped into fighting stance, he knew he underestimated her body technique at least. No need to fight, I'll let you come with me. Looking at the way Han Yang jumped into fighting stance, he knew he underestimated her body technique at least. No matter how strong she was, she wouldn't be cumbersome with that movement technique and might even give him some help. Of course, another plan was that since she was from the hidden sects, perhaps he could try to get something out of her mouth. That was the most important. Han Yang intentionally showed some ability and saw that Yi Mo indeed seemed to be impressed as he allowed her to go. She raised her head high in self-satisfaction. Ever since Yi Mo killed Oyu Tanhu, she felt she was no match for him. But even though she felt she was no match for him, she felt she lost to no one in movement technique. Even Yi Mo, buy the ticket to Xian Mountain and wait for me at the airport tomorrow morning. Yi Mo dropped these words and left quickly. He needed to find Wen Dong before he could find the thing. Only Wen Dong knew where it came from. Plus, he wanted to go to Flowing Snake. He needed to buy some things that could prevent Nai Shuang to not attack his relatives. He's a conceited person, Han Yang suddenly said. I think he's an arrogant freak, not respecting his elders. Li Xiong sneered. Han Zixin waved his hand and said, Old Li, you need to change your temper. Do you know why the Song family didn't dare to touch him? Your Li family is also a big family of Beijing, so you would know after you ask Marshal Li. Sometimes, you can't just be doing academics. Li Xiong looked at Han Zixin in shock. He thought Han Zixin would be on his side, but Han Zixin was helping Yimo. Marshal Li was his big brother and also the most authoritative person in the Li family. He didn't expect Han Zixin to tell him to ask his big brother. Did his big brother look at Yimo differently? Why would someone so young and abandoned by the Yi family be worth noting? Yimo bought a lot of daily products. Although he was stage 3 Kai gathering, he was still fearful of his experience in the desert. He didn't believe he was completely safe just because he was stage 3. There might be earth level or even sky level masters. Even if he was surrounded by those bugs in the desert, he would die. After he bought enough things, he called Nai Shuangshuang. Nai Shuangshuang's shy voice sounded. It was very sweet and made people feel comfortable and even render this impulsive feeling. When Yimo came to Hua University, Nai Shuangshuang stood at the door looking very nervous. She wore a plain green dress and her hair was wet. A few strands came down her soft-skinned face, making her seem more nimble and innocent. Accompanied with her high soaring chest, almost all the students at the door would secretly look at her. Just when Yimo walked in front of her, he smelt this faint aroma. It seemed to be natural coming from the body. Seeing Yimo come over, Nai Shuangshuang rubbed her sleeves nervously and seemed to say something, but Yimo knew she said nothing. Seeing Yimo just stand in front of her and not say anything for a long time, Nai Shuangshuang raised her head and used those innocent-looking eyes and said, Brother Yi, you wanted me. Then, she lowered her head and held onto the edge of her skirt tightly. Yimo sighed. This woman could go get a golden Oscars at Hollywood. He thought she would be perfect to lure those black bulky men, so why stay at a place like Hua University? Moreover, she seemed to know how to utilize men's weakness. Even though Yimo knew there was something wrong with her, he still couldn't prevent himself from having strange thoughts towards her. As though not hearing Yimo's reply, she secretly looked at Yimo while blushing and looked down. Yimo said, Indeed, I wanted to look for you. Do you have time? Tomorrow's the weekend. Nai Shuangshuang just said half a sentence. Yimo sneered. She was acting innocent too much. Tomorrow is the weekend, so that meant she could go out with him for the entire night. What sort of girl would say that to someone she only met for the second time? She didn't say the second half of the sentence, but any man could imagine it. It seemed to be more enticing left unsaid. Let's go. You wanted to drink with Zhuo Yangqing yesterday but wasn't able to. How about I take you out for a drink? Yimo said straightforwardly. He felt that frosty feeling on Nai Shuangshuang was weaker today. He didn't want to know who Nai Shuangshuang was, but Yi Ling still had to stay a month or two at Hua University. He didn't want her to be in danger, so he had to know who Nai Shuangshuang was, and what that bleak feeling from her was. If she was a threat to Yi Ling, he didn't mind doing something good for society. Nai Shuangshuang looked at Yimo in shock due to his straightforwardness but didn't reject. She hesitantly agreed as though it was hard for her to reject. Drunk Eye Bar is close to the uni but they didn't sit at the bar and chose a distant corner and Saturday. What do you want to drink? Yimo asked casually. If possible, he didn't want to get on bad terms with her. Although he wasn't afraid of her, he didn't want enemies everywhere. So what if Nai Shuangshuang was messing around with other people every day? The reason he asked her out today was to tell her to back off from his sister. Nai Shuangshuang didn't say what she wanted to drink but instead asked, Brother Yi, did you ask me out to drink? I feel as though you don't like me very much, but why did you ask me out? Under the dim light, she seemed more bold and could at least look at Yimo when she talked. Since you can tell I don't like you very much, why did you come out with me? Yimo asked with derision. She didn't seem to notice it and said feebly, because the first time I saw you, I feel this intimacy from you so you like me? Then, Yimo told the waiter to serve to beer. He wasn't here to drink today. Nai Shuangshuang suddenly raised her head and said, Yes, Brother Yi, although it's not to the degree of liking you but I have a great impression of you. It's the first time I had this feeling coming here. So today, when you said you wanted to drink, I came with you without hesitation. But why are you talking to me with this tone? I don't even know what your name is. Emo sneered. Good impression. If you're still a virgin, perhaps I would have some good impression to you. Now, don't talk about good impression in front of me. Originally, Emo wanted to have a talk with her, but seeing how she kept this act up, he suddenly felt very annoyed. You. Nai Shuang Shuang suddenly stood up. Her pretty face was shaking under the light. She pointed her hand at Emo and wanted to say something, but she put it back down. After a while, she continued, You called me out just to say this to me? Do you have no manners around girls? I saw you wrong. Then, Nai Shuang Shuang turned to leave as though she was really angered by Emo's words. However, Emo sat without moving. He knew that if this woman wanted men's yang essence, she wouldn't let him go because he cultivated pure yang kai. This was probably the good impression in her eyes. However, Emo saw Nai Shuang Shuang walk to the door and still had no intentions of turning back. He frowned but didn't believe he saw her wrong. He still felt the sense of the opposite sex from her yesterday. Plus, this woman had this eerie cold feeling. Emo knew she wasn't a normal person. Such a hot chick. Come in and have a drink with me. Two men who just walked into the bar saw Nai Shuang Shuang. One of their eyes brightened up immediately and he grabbed towards her. Nai Shuang Shuang screamed but couldn't break free. Let's go to a private room, it's much better than outside. Then, the grabbed Nai Shuang Shuang walked inside. Many people saw it, and even the bar people, but no one said a thing. They continued to do what they were doing. Nai Shuang Shuang looked helplessly towards Emo. It was obvious she wanted Emo to help her. She saw how strong Emo was yesterday. If he did something, even if he couldn't beat these two, she could break free. Emo, however, was still sipping the beer that was just brought to him as though he didn't see it at all. However, Emo's spirit sense scanned that the eyes Nai Shuang Shuang showed had disappointment, deep disappointment rather than loss in hope. Soon, Nai Shuang Shuang was dragged into a private room by those two scum. The door was then slammed shut. You're also coming to have fun at the bar, what are you scared of? I'll make you very comfortable later. There's plenty of money, don't worry. I'm not someone who just leaves after eating. The man released Nai Shuang Shuang's hands after closing the door. You're also coming to have fun at the bar, what are you scared of? I'll make you very comfortable later. There's plenty of money, don't worry. I'm not someone who just leaves after eating. The man released Nai Shuang Shuang's hands after closing the door. Where did you see me being scared? Nai Shuang Shuang's face was suddenly very bleak. The two men froze when they saw Nai Shuang Shuang at the door, her face seemed so helpless. With her innocent look, they felt they needed to comfort her first after pulling her in. However, this girl changed her face too quick. The helplessness and innocence turned to bleakness now. The two men felt a frosty feeling from their bones. If this wasn't at a bar and the room lights were still on, they would have thought they met a fox demon deep in the mountains. Who are you? The other man yelled. The girl still had the same face, but it caused them to feel cold and scared. Nai Shuang Shuang sneered. Who am I? Didn't you drag me in? Now that you dragged me in, why aren't you doing anything but asking who I am? Nai Shuang Shuang's cold tone made the two men shiver. Suddenly, they lost all their lust. They had no lust for such a beautiful Nai Shuang Shuang. They just wanted to get out quick. They couldn't understand how a woman changed so much. We're joking, let's go, Xiao Xiong, let's get out, the man who grabbed Nai Shuang Shuang suddenly said. He didn't want to face Nai Shuang Shuang, he felt his skin was tingling. Go out. Why go out? You pulled me in, don't you want to do something? Nai Shuang Shuang suddenly said without any tone. Don't want to. The man called Xiao Xiong felt the frigidness in the room and wanted to pull the door open. They didn't want to face Nai Shuang Shuang. Nai Shuang Shuang sneered. Do you think you can still go? What are you saying? The man who held the handle of the door just asked that and felt this long needle pierce the top of his head. The other man just saw a silver light flashed and his pal was on the ground. He wanted to scream, but that silver light also pierced his head. You. The man could only say this word before also falling to the ground. Nai Shuang Shuang dumped these two on the couch. From her easy attitude, it seemed as though these people weren't 70 kilograms but a few kgs. Nai Shuang Shuang looked at the two she killed and was lost for a moment. However, her eyes became cold again. She suddenly pulled the zip on her skirt as though she was taking it off. Clap, clap, clap. Nai Shuang Shuang turned around and saw Yimo clapping behind her. She didn't even know when Yimo came in. Fascinating, fascinating. I saw these people fall asleep not long after they came in. I see you taking off your clothes too. Do you want to sleep a while too? Yimo didn't sound displeased at all. Nai Shuang Shuang's eyes seemed anxious as she quickly pulled the zip on her skirt back and stared at Yimo a while before asking, "When did you come in?" Yimo sneered. "This isn't what you should ask, it has nothing to do with you. I just didn't want to see an ugly scene so I came in earlier." Nai Shuang Shuang bit her lips until it almost bled. Her eyes seemed red, but she still didn't say anything. "What you want to do has nothing to do with me, but I'm afraid after you're done, I will lose my appetite to talk with you. So, I want to say my words first. As for what you do after I leave, it has nothing to do with me," Yimo said coldly. Nai Shuang Shuang raised her head and looked at Yimo saying word by word, "Do you believe that I can kill you right now with a raise of my hand?" Yimo suddenly sat down and pulled out a beer bottle from his storage ring, opened it and drank a mouth before saying, "I don't believe it." Nai Shuang Shuang seemed to have forgotten what she just said and just stared at Yimo. He wore very little, just a shirt and long pants. Where did he get this bottle from? If it was in his pocket, it would be bulging. "I'm waiting for you to kill me. If you're gonna do it, then hurry up, my patience is limited." Yimo just saw Nai Shuang Shuang kill with needles, but he didn't know where she hid the needles. If she attacked, he would take her needles and have a look. He wasn't so perverted to scan her entire body with his spirit sense. "But I don't want to kill you, I really don't." Then, the bleak look on her face retreated. She paused for a moment before continuing, "You knew I could deal with them, so you didn't help me, right?" Yimo shook his head. "Even if I didn't know if you could deal with them, I wouldn't do anything. Who knows if you wanted it anyways because you're this sort of person." Nai Shuang Shuang suddenly started to shake as Hgr face grew pale again. Her hands even moved a few times but eventually stopped. "Speak, what do you want?" Nai Shuang Shuang's tone was no longer sweet but low and bleak. Yimo said coldly, "I know your origin isn't ordinary, and I don't know what you're doing at Hua University. However, there's one thing I need to persuade you. You can think of it as a warning. Yi Ling is my sister. You better not touch half a strand of her hair. Otherwise, no matter who you are, I won't let you go." "Yi Ling is your sister?" Nai Shuang Shuang studied Yimo again and seemed to be shocked. Nai Shuang Shuang was just shocked for a short time and recovered quickly. She said, "I've been at Hua Uni for a few years, who did you see me touch? Regardless of whether or not you're Yi Ling's brother, I wouldn't touch her." Yimo said plainly, "Not necessarily. You and Zhuo Yangqing are such good friends, but you could harm her much less other people. So, I don't really believe your words." "When did I harm Zhuo Yangqing?" "You're wrong. Indeed, you saw me kill these people today, but don't think everything you see is reality. I don't want to explain to you. I can make an oath but not because I'm scared of you, but because—" Nai Shuang Shuang's eyes went red again. Yimo looked coldly at her. If she didn't make a deadly oath, then she could expect not to walk out of this room today. "I, Nai Shuang Shuang, swear that if I have any bad intentions towards Yi Ling, I would be struck by lightning and never have the chance to enter reincarnation." Nai Shuang Shuang spoke and even shed tears. Yimo wouldn't care about her tears, but he was quite satisfied with her oath. No matter who Nai Shuang Shuang was, this oath was quite serious. It was believable when a cultivator made such oath. Seeing Nai Shuang Shuang make the oath, Yimo stood up. He didn't care about what Nai Shuang Shuang did with the two dead people. However, Nai Shuang Shuang walked to the door first and turned and said, "Whether you believe it or not, I can kill you easily, but I didn't. And, I want to tell you, I'm still a virgin." Then, Nai Shuang Shuang turned and left. After walking out a long way, Yimo's voice sounded at her ear, "Whether you believe it or not, the moment you attacked, you would have died. As for whether or not you're a virgin, it has nothing to do with me." Nai Shuang Shuang suddenly turned around. She found that she was outside of the bar, but Yi Mo was nowhere to be seen. She was astonished. Was that sound just an illusion? Yi Mo looked at the two dead men and walked out. He didn't deal with the body. It didn't concern him if he was investigated for it. When Yi Mo came back, he found out that Yi Ling had returned and was talking with Yun Bing. It seemed they had been chatting for a long time. "Brother, you're finally back. Why did you come back at 2? Yi Ling was obviously unhappy he came back so late. Yi Mo smiled and said, "You came from so far, aren't you going to sleep? I'm leaving Beijing tomorrow." "You're going tomorrow? Are you going back to Luokang?" Yun Bing was worried. "No, I'm doing some business." Yi Mo couldn't say what he was doing. "Brother, can you turn your phone on? I can never reach your phone." Yi Ling still wanted to catch up with Yi Mo, but he was leaving tomorrow. Yi Mo didn't care about his phone and instead said to Yi Ling seriously, "Yi Ling, don't get close to Nai Shuang Shuang from your school, do you understand?" "Why?" "Brother, she's the prettiest in the school and likes to keep a low profile. We rarely talk. Do you know her?" Yi Ling asked in surprise. Yi Mo felt relieved and said, "I don't know her but trust my words. After you graduate, if I'm still not done, you can go Luokang. Brother, after Zifeng comes back, you should talk to him. In fact, I don't agree to him staying at the Yi family, but he said it was very hard for Grandpa too. He wanted to help Grandpa, and he said the main reason Grandpa got him back was due to you." Although Yi Ling didn't want to stay at Beijing, she was worried about Yi Zifeng staying here himself. Although her big and fourth uncle was sent away from Beijing, who knew if the other members of the Yi family would do something to Yi Zifeng? Yi Mo nodded. Yi Zifeng saw things more clearly than Yi Ling, but it was impossible for him to try to persuade Yi Zifeng. Everyone had their own life. Seeing Yi Mo look down and not talk, Yi Ling suddenly thought of one thing and quickly said, "Brother, Zifeng told me to give this to you. He said it was related to your mum." Chapter 188, Escape. Chapter 188, Escape. When Yi Mo came to the airport, Han Yang was already there waiting for him. By the looks of it, she had been there for a while. Han Yang carried a bag. She looked at Yi Mo in shock, who only carried a small bag, thinking that this bag wasn't even enough for some clothes, much less equipment. The news she got was that the place they were going was quite far. She didn't know that if Yi Mo wasn't trying to hide his ring, he wouldn't even bother carrying a bag. Yi Mo boarded in no time and sat with Han Yang. Although Han Yang didn't use any makeup, she had this faint aroma on her that was quite pleasant. Although she wasn't extremely pretty, her temperament was quite good. Seeing Yi Mo didn't even talk to her after getting on the plane but just played with a jade bracelet, she was a little annoyed and asked, "My news is to go to Huzhong province. Why are you going to Xian Mountain?" "I need to do some private business," Yi Mo said, and then sunk into silence again. Seeing Yi Mo not interested in talking to her, Han Yang frowned but stopped talking. Yi Mo was thinking about what Yi Ling said to him last night. "The bracelet was let from Dad, saying your mum left it for you." The bracelet was very old. Yi Mo studied it with his spirit sense and didn't find anything out of the ordinary. It was just a normal bracelet. Sighing, he put the bracelet on his hand. Yun Bing, who was planning on going back to Ninghai, decided to go back a week later due to Yi Ling. Although he didn't know why she was staying for an extra few days, he felt she treated him a little different. "Do you know the organization North Sand?" Seeing Yi Mo finally stop playing with the bracelet, Han Yang asked quietly. Yi Mo dazed and replied, "I only heard about it. Why?" Seeing Yi Mo finally listen to her, Han Yang breathed and said, "You should know that Feng Tian you saved from the desert last time, right? She's from North Sand. And she said that data came from the North Sand. As for how it came out, she didn't say, but it's definitely related to North Sand." Yi Mo was not surprised she was from North Sand, otherwise, she wouldn't know Wendong. He was looking for Wendong now, but if he could find Feng Tian, then she should know a little about North Sand. Thinking about this, Yi Mo asked Edom, "Do you know where Feng Tian is now?" Han Yang shook her head and said, "I don't know. This was the info she gave Li Hu last time, but my grandpa didn't expect the data to be so precious at the time, so they didn't take it this seriously. And, it said that North Sand is the biggest independent organization in the world. Members are from all over the world, and they have first-grade scientists and military equipment. Their purpose is to establish a democratic country more powerful than America. However, up until now, their means are very despicable. Yimo knew Wendong was from North Sand, but he didn't know what sort of organization this was. Han Yang sneered and said, "Dreams are good, but the members are too mixed up. Before the country was set up, many people wanted to get rich through the data. The data you got was sent out from someone inside. So North Sand was such a big organization to the degree of creating a country. Although Yimo wasn't familiar with politics, he knew that it wasn't so easy. The resource-abundant places were already owned. Do you know the exact situation of North Sand?" Yimo thought that since this came from North Sand, it would help if he got to know the organization more. Han Yang shook her head. "I never care about these things. Grandpa only told me after I came out." "Which hidden sect are you from? How do you enter the hidden sect?" Yimo took a sudden turn and changed the topic. However, this time, Han Yang just shut her eyes and didn't say anything. Yimo didn't continue asking her. It seemed it was quite hard knowing about the hidden sects from her. After leaving the airport, Yimo called a taxi to the Xiangshan Valley. Han Yang didn't know why Yimo went there, but before she came out, her grandpa told her that Yimo wasn't a simple person and he acquired the data in the first place, so do as he says. So when Yimo arranged the route, although Han Yang was curious why Yimo didn't start with North Sand, she didn't ask him about it. The taxi stopped at the mountain waste and Yimo told the taxi to leave before taking Han Yang to a street with food and hotel. Although he didn't go up with Wendong last time, it wasn't far from the parking lot. Yimo also seemed to see Wendong walk into this hotel last time from a distance. He didn't know which one Wendong went to, but this was the only clue he had. If he couldn't find Wendong here, then he had no better idea. Perhaps they could only look for Feng Tian, but according to Han Yang, it was quite hard to find her now. "Why did you come here?" Han Yang knew that North Sand definitely wouldn't have a base at Xiangshan Valley. "I have a friend who knows some things. She gave the data to me, so I came here for a look." Han Yang originally thought Yimo must knew that a certain friend lived here, but after following Yimo and asking a few places, she knew that Yimo didn't know at all. She was quite speechless. Although it wasn't a popular tourist place, there were at least tens or even 100 hotels here. How long was this going to take? Luckily, Han Yang's worry didn't turn into reality. When Yimo entered a hotel with only an old couple and asked about Wendong, the owner didn't show confusion and studied Yimo carefully. Yimo knew he came to the right place. "You're looking for Dong Dong?" The male owner was an old man in his 60s. His voice was slow, but he obviously knew Wendong. Yimo quickly said, "Yes, uncle, I'm Sister Don's friend." Yimo, in order to show that he was close to Wendong, he even called her sister. Yimo also felt speechless thinking about it. "You are Yimo? Oh, wait." The old man suddenly went in the room and took out a letter to Yimo. "Last time, Dong Dong asked someone to bring this to you if you came in 3 months. If you didn't come, she told me to burn it." Yimo took the letter in surprise, thinking if it wasn't due to Han Zixin's business, he definitely wouldn't come. Even if he came, how could Wendong know he could find this place and even leave this letter for him? Yimo opened the letter and was dazed once again. There was just one word: run. What did this mean? Han Yang also saw this and looked at Yimo with curiosity. The owner couple saw Yimo look at the letter in shock but walked into the backyard. This big run word was written from clear to unclear. The last bit seemed to disappear. Yimo frowned and suddenly understood. Wendong meant for him to run away as far as possible and even hide his name. Not good, something happened to Wendong. That was Yimo's first thought. Something must have happened to Wendong due to that data, and those people were interrogating her where it went. Only Wendong knew she gave it to him. She didn't tell about him but instead told him to leave. It could be seen that although they met each other occasionally, she was a very trustworthy person. Han Yang saw Yimo's face change and wanted to ask what was going on. Suddenly, Yimo's face was bleak as he looked at the door of the inn. "I knew you would come, as expected, haha." Wendong wouldn't say no matter what, but is that any use? A cocky voice sounded. Han Yang suddenly found Yimo had charged out. When Yimo came back, he carried a lady with him. This lady had shriveled hair and messy clothes. There was wounds all over her body and her face was pale. The moment he snatched Wendong from the car at the door of the inn, he knew she wasn't going to make it. Her heart was shattered and she didn't have a breath anymore. He could treat her heart with his kai, but her life force was dissipated. Yimo couldn't save her unless there was a spiritual herb that could recover her life force. Although Yimo had some pills on him, it was a far cry from a spirit herb that recovered life force. Yimo inserted his kai into Wendong, wanting to wake her up, but there was nothing after a while. Chapter 189, Between Life and Death. Chapter 189, Between Life and Death. As though scared by Yimo's ghostly figure, everyone took out their guns on the car. The leading person was a strangely beautiful young married woman. Wendong. Yimo suddenly felt guilty. Although Wendong's death was not due to him, she was tortured like this probably because she didn't want to reveal where the data was. Wendong slowly opened her eyes with the forceful treatment of Yimo's strong kai. When she saw Yimo, she was surprised and quickly said in a voice that even Yimo could barely hear, "Yimo, sorry, I involved you in this. North Sand is looking for the model. Quickly go, I didn't say." It was just these few words that used up all of her power and life force. Her head fell in Yimo's arms as she slowly closed her eyes. Yimo suddenly felt a fit of emptiness. Wendong didn't die due to him, but he couldn't bear this sadness. Funny how he still wanted to find Wendong to get the rest of the data but didn't consider the complications for Wendong at all. Although Wendong was a woman, she was straightforward, generous, and very tenacious. Although she didn't tell Yimo what she did with the money, he knew that she definitely didn't use it herself. Yimo raised his head and looked coldly at the four men pointing guns at him before looking down at Wendong and saying, "Sister Dong, don't worry, just go. I swear that in my life, I will pull North Sand from its roots and burn that data in front of your grave." "Yimo, you." Han Yang heard Yimo's words and was shocked. Regardless of whether he eradicated North Sand, the country needed that data. If Yimo casually burnt it in front of someone's grave, what would her grandpa say? Yimo's eyes were slightly red as he glanced coldly at Han Yang. "Shut up." Han Yang was about to rage being told off by Yimo for no reason, but she looked at the guns pointed at them and resisted the urge. Yimo turned, looked at the four men pointing guns at them, and coldly said, "You are the bastards of North Sand? Indeed we are from North Sand. You are the person who took our data." It was the young lady who talked. Her eyes were cold, but it gave off a mature young woman's sense. "You hit Sister Dong." Yimo's tone was frosty. "That's right, I sent the order, but don't worry, perhaps you may enjoy that treatment very soon." The young woman's tone was colder than Yimo. Then, she continued, "If you give it over, perhaps you may enjoy a very beautiful service instead. We North Sand is established on the ideal on an equal environment. If you still have some morality in you, hand it over." Yimo didn't even bother replying this time. He just waved his hand in mid-air a few times, and a few frosty wind swept over. The two men and that woman's wrists were sliced off. The eerie thing was that not much blood spilled out. But still, a man managed to do this, and the wind blade that sliced on the car instead created a metallic screeching sound. The Range Rover had a deep mark appearing on its door. Everyone was shocked at that moment. What was this? He sliced people's wrist off in mid-air. No one saw anything, blood didn't even spill out. Han Yang's brain also froze. She tried to overestimate Yimo's capabilities, but now, she knew that Yimo was far powerful than she thought. She even forgot about Yimo yelling at her. With Yimo's power, if he fought with her and he suddenly used that, she didn't even dare to think. The man who dodged the wind blade quickly recovered from his terror. It could be seen he was the strongest of the four. In just less than a second, he pulled the trigger on Yimo. The moment he did, he finally felt relieved. This person was too strong. If he didn't react fast, perhaps he would be like his three other partners. The instant the gun sounded, he felt a figure dash across in front of him, and after which, the hand holding the gun felt cold. He subconsciously looked at his hands and they were all sliced off. Still, not much blood came out. Then, Yimo's words came out. I want to slice off your hands. You think you can run? He turned around and saw Yimo carrying Wendong and stared at him coldly from not far. Everyone who had their hands cut off all looked at Yimo as though they were dumb. How was someone so horrifyingly strong? What did he just use? Get on the car. Yimo looked coldly at the North Sand members and said. A short but fierce man suddenly yelled in anger, Why should I listen to you? I'm not going on the car, what can you do? I won't frown at all if you're going to kill me. Yimo didn't even look at the man and just threw a fireball. The short man yelled for a brief moment and made no noise. He was consumed by the fireball and kept rolling on the ground. His mouth shape showed he was yelling, but there was no noise. There was terror and begging for mercy in his eyes, but Yimo's eyes were cold and had no intention of letting him go. Han Yang saw that Yimo actually shot out a fireball and suddenly shivered. She had tried to overestimate him again and again, but didn't expect to have underestimated him for the second time. He could send out fireballs casually. This was something in the legends. No wonder he killed Oyu Tanhu. With his power, even a few Oyu Tanhu would be no match for him. Han Yang suddenly thought of Yimo's words that he was going to burn the data. She thought those were just angry words before, but now, she had realized those were very real. The remaining three looked at Yimo in terror. They got in the back seats of the car without Yimo saying anything else. Then, Yimo sealed their movement before coldly saying, What you did to Sister Dong, I will make you pay slowly. Han Yang hesitated a long time before saying, Yimo, if you can give me that data, perhaps I can save her. What? You can save Wendong? Do you know her situation? Although I can recover her damaged meridians and internal injuries, but her life force is dissipated, do you know what it is? Perhaps you just thought the heart stopped beating. Yimo didn't believe that there was anyone else who could recover life force other than him. Han Yang shook her head and said, I don't know what is life force, but my master said 1,000-year lotus seed heart can save someone who died not long ago. This time, Yimo looked at Han Yang in surprise. After a little while, he said, You actually know about 1,000-year lotus seed heart. It seems you understand quite a lot. Didn't your master teach you that it can only save someone who died within 1 incense time? If you can find one in half an incense time, then I owe you one. Han Yang shook her head and said, No need for that long, I can take it out now. Then she took out a jade bottle and gave it to Yimo. Yimo looked at it. It was indeed a 1,000-year lotus seed heart. There was actually such a thing on Earth. Yimo almost forgot about saving Wendong, but he quickly came to his senses and carried Wendong into a room in the hotel. He told Han Yang to keep watch over those North Sand people. However, that old couple was actually not inside. If the seed heart arrived in his hands earlier, he could make an entire bottle of medical pills with it. But now, he could only turn it into a serum and save Wendong. It was just him who could do it though. If it were someone else, they wouldn't be able to save Wendong even if they had the 1,000-year lotus seed heart. Yimo had a lot of recovery pills inside his ring. With the seed heart now, Wendong's heart soon started to beat again slowly. An hour later, Yimo recovered some of Wendong's damaged meridians and internal injuries. Her breathing had stabilized, and Yimo knew she was fine before finally releasing a gasp of relief. You really saved her. Han Yang obviously didn't know how precious the lotus seed heart was. She knew it was precious but only heard of it. In the depths of the mountains, she found it unintentionally. Her master complimented her for having good fortune, but even her master didn't know how to use it and just heard it could be used to save people. However, Yimo actually used this to reanimate Wendong. Yimo nodded and said, Yes, Sister Dong is fine now. I will definitely do what I promised to do, but I still want to ask you a question. Where did you get this from? After asking, Yimo grew anxious. 1,000-year lotus seed heart usually appeared as 36 together. Since Han Yang could get one, where was the other 35? This thing was not only able to reanimate the dead but had huge uses for cultivation. If there was news of it, he would dump everything aside and search for that first. Chapter 190. Inquiry. Chapter 190. Inquiry. Han Yang looked at Yimo and seemed to know what Yimo was thinking, but she still said, A few years ago, my master took me to gather herbs and I found it around there. I was at a cliff, and there were two birds fighting. The seed came out from one of the birds' beak. Later, I felt it smelt good, and so I took it and showed it to my master. My master told me it was the 1,000-year lotus seed heart, but master said although it was precious, people rarely knew how to use it. I didn't expect you to know how. Yimo looked at Han Yang's expression and knew she wouldn't say where it was. However, Yimo wouldn't give up now, he thought, and asked, "Can you draw out the environment where you found the seed?" She hesitated a bit but still took out a pen and paper and drew the surrounding. She drew a cliff, the top was very broad, and there were some chrysanthemum at the cliff side. Yimo took the drawing and observed it. He immediately knew this map was about the same as what Mokang gave him. It should be the same place. Mokang said that the place had precious herbs, and it seemed to be true. Yimo took the map and was excited. If he found this place, wouldn't he be able to find a lot of precious herbs immediately? Perhaps he could use that to break through to stage 4. Yimo knew that without outside world factor, he would never be able to reach stage 4 just by cultivating himself. There were 9 stages in Kai gathering. If he reached stage 4, that would be intermediate stage Kai gathering. If he could make his flying sword, he would be able to fly on it. Yimo was excited just thinking about it. What sort of notion was flying on sword in a place like Earth? Yimo, can I ask you a question? Han Yang hesitated for a long time but still couldn't resist her curiosity. Yimo nodded. Ask. Although Han Yang didn't say where, she obviously didn't draw random things. And, he guessed it was the same place Mokang drew, but he didn't know where exactly it was. However, it was rare to see chrysanthemum growing in a cliff. What projectile was that you used to slice off their arms? And what was that fireball? Han Yang thought if she had this projectile, her battle power would increase by many folds. Yimo smiled and said, "If I say once you cultivate inner chi to a certain degree, you can form those fireball and invisible projectile, would you believe me?" Han Yang made the look that I'd be an idiot to believe you. Then, she said, "It's okay if you don't want to say, I've seen too many masters, but none could condense their chi into a fireball." Yimo didn't fuss with this question and gave Wendong to Han Yang. "Let's leave here now, after I ask some questions, then decide what to do." An hour later, Yimo drove the car to a distant place and pulled the 3 out. Other than the beautiful woman who still seemed calm, the other 2 men were already horrified. This woman seemed to be the head. He casually beat the 2 men unconscious and looked at the woman and said, "You know I will ask one by one. If you say any lies, you should have seen what I can do." The lady bit her lips and said after a while, "If you let me go, I can agree to any request you have, much less a few questions." Then, there was some rudeness on her face. Yimo sighed. This woman was an acting genius. He just cut off one of her hands, but now she was sexually luring him. "You don't have the right to argue with me. If you don't want to say, then don't. I will ask someone else." Yimo didn't have the slightest good impression to this woman. He was prepared to kill her as soon as he was done. Hearing Yimo's words, this woman unexpectedly didn't make more request and just said, "You should know we're from North Sand, and so is Wendong." Her pal stole important data from North Sand and ran. "We're just responsible to bring her back. How did you know to ambush us at Xiangshan Valley?" Yimo couldn't understand this. Without Han Zixin, he wouldn't even go there. How would people from North Sand know? The young lady didn't hesitate to say, "North Sand has 6 major bases across the globe. We're from the Asian base. It was an order from the base for us to wait at Xiangshan Valley. I heard it was because we got a new advisor. It should be his idea." "New advisor? How did he know?" Yimo asked curiously. The lady said once again, "He's called Dongfang Shi. When we found that Wendong was related to that inn in Xiangshan Valley, he told us to not startle anyone. We just needed to hide outside the inn. He said that no matter if the person who got the data knew Wendong well or not, they would come back for more after a while. Then, we could capture the person." "Dongfang Shi?" Yimo repeated. He felt this name was very familiar. Seeing Yimo talk about Dongfang Shi, the lady quickly said, "It said that many things were planned by him ever since he came to the Asian base." Then, the lady secretly looked at Yimo, seeing that he was in deep thought, seemingly interested in this Dongfang Shi, She said, I've seen this Dongfang Shi once before, he is lustful, but it said that his main purpose coming here was for North Sand to help him get revenge. His enemy is Yimo. Speaking till now, Yimo had understood who this Dongfang Shi was. He was the original advisor of Nanqing. If he didn't attack to their base, or if Ning Qingxue was taken away, Dongfang Shi's plans would have succeeded. Yimo sneered. He didn't go find him, but he wanted revenge. However, this guy was indeed big trouble. Life wasn't safe one day with him. He was different from those big families. Those big families had concerns, but he didn't. Yimo casually knocked the lady out and asked the other two. The news were about the same. Don't kill these three, I just called my grandpa. My grandpa said to bring them back to Beijing. Just when Yimo wanted to kill the three, Han Yang spoke. Okay, but there's one thing I need to talk to you about. As for your data, I will find it. You don't need to come with me now. You just need to bring these three back, and please take care of Wendong. When she is well, she will leave herself. Yimo wanted to find the 1,000-year lotus seed heart place and then go North Sand. To him, that was much more important. Nothing was more important than his cultivation. If it was before they met North Sand, Han Yang would jeer, but now, she understood that Yimo was right, that she was cumbersome following him. Yimo's power far exceeded hers. Even with her pride, her movement technique might be far inferior than Yimo's. She didn't even see how Yimo got Wendong from the car an hour earlier. As for how Yimo knew 4 North Sand people came, she didn't understand either. Seeing Han Yang's silence, Yimo said again, Don't worry, I will return your 1,000 lotus seed heart. After hesitating for a while, Han Yang finally agreed to Yimo's words but requested that Yimo called them as soon as he had news of the data. Chapter 191, Relax. Chapter 191, Relax. Luo Kang. Ning Qingxue didn't expect to get Su Jingwen's call. Her first reaction was that was Su Jiang when going to ask her for those 3 beads. She didn't know why, but she was very scared that Su Jingwen would ask her about these 3 beads. If she really wanted them, she could only give it back. Qingxue, are you with Yimo right now? I want to talk to him for a bit. Su Jingwen's voice sounded careful, as though scared that Ning Qingxue would misunderstand something. Ning Qingxue felt relieved, thinking that Su Jingwen probably didn't know her relationship with Yimo, but she didn't want to explain and just said, I'm not with Yimo. Su Jingwen didn't know, felt strange, but quickly said, Isn't Yimo at Luo Kang too? Did you not see him? Yimo is at Luo Kang? Ning Qingxue repeated, but thought, when did Yimo come to Luo Kang? Brother Yi is at Luo Kang? That's impossible. This time, it was Kai Wanqing speaking. She just walked into the room and heard what Ning Qingxue said. What Su Jingwen said later, Ning Qingxue didn't know. She hung up the call in disappointment. She also thought that Yimo couldn't possibly come to Luo Kang, and Su Jingwen probably misunderstood their relationship and thought she was with Yimo. That was probably why she thought Yimo was at Luo Kang. However, what did Su Jingwen want Yimo for? Ning Qingxue thought about last time at Su Jingwen's birthday and how Yimo danced with her. She suddenly felt annoyed but looked at Kai Wanqing after a good while. Wanqing, I think I should go back. Kai Wanqing nodded and said, my dad wants me to go study at England. I can't even go back to the military. I have to go. Qingxue, take care. Ning Qingxue nodded and said after half a beat, Wanqing, can you tell me, do you like Yimo? Kai Wanqing blushed but eventually shook her head. I don't know, but I really like being together with him. I feel very comfortable with him, safe and happy. But I don't know if this is like. But if I do, then I should be jealous when I see him with other women. But last time when I saw him with your aunt, I felt they should be together and didn't feel jealousy at all. Then, Kai Wanqing's face recovered after a good while. She turned and looked at Ning Qingguks and said, Qingxue, do you think this is like? My dad also felt my thoughts are strange, and that's why he told me to go England. I originally didn't really want to go, but my mother also agreed this time. I don't know. Ning Qingxue shook her head subconsciously. She didn't even know how she felt about Yimo herself, so how could she judge Kai Wanqing's feelings? Kai Wanqing looked down. After a while, she said, My grandma once told me that if you like someone, You need to grab him, don't go regretting at the end. However, Grandma doesn't know that not all people you like can be grasped. So, this time, my parents want to send me away, although I don't want to go, but after thinking about it, perhaps what they said is right. I'm leaving in 2 days, I came here to tell you about it. Yeah, I should go back too. Ning Qingxue suddenly felt very fatigued. She would rather be a strong woman at Ning Family Medicine than be so tired. You must grasp what you like, but can you? Kai Wanqing suddenly raised her head and asked, Qingxue, do you like Yimo? Ning Qingxue's eyes were lost. After a while, she replied, I didn't know before, but now, I think I probably like him. I don't know when it happened but… Wanqing, I want to go on a holiday and relax. Perhaps when I came back, I would be staying at Ning High or go back to U State and continue my previous job. If you come back from England, come look for me. Qingxue, take care, I will be back at most 2 years. When I come back, I will definitely look for you. Perhaps at that time, you would have found your new life goal again and even have a family. Kai Wanqing understood Ning Qingxue's mentality the most. If Yimo was just a dependence or gratitude for her, then Ning Qingxue might have really fallen into a single-sided love. Ning Qingxue shook her head and didn't argue with Kai Wanqing's word. Even if she couldn't be with Yimo, she still had her other life. As for starting a family, she never thought about it. Su Jiang when put down the phone. She didn't expect Yimo to not be with Ning Qingxue. In that case, should she still go to Luokang? Jingwen, what are you thinking about? Su Jingwen's mother walked in. She saw her daughter sitting dumbfounded at the table, and so she asked immediately. Nothing, just. She was about to tell her mother the master who sold the charms could be at Luokang. However, her mother interrupted her. Jingwen, Wei Zheng is back. He just called me, he would be at Ning High soon. Really, Wei Zheng cousin has already graduated? Su Jingwen's face was full of joy and surprise. Wei Zheng was Xie Wei Zheng. He grew up together with Su Jingwen. From young to maturity, Xie Wei Zheng was a true genius. Not only was he outstandingly smart, he covered for Su Jingwen everywhere. However, he went to America to study, causing their contact to grow less. The last time they met was 2 years ago when Su Jingwen went to America for her mother's condition. The first reaction she got when hearing that Xie Wei Zheng came back was joy. Look at how happy you are, Wei Zheng won't be leaving again this time. He's prepared to develop his career at Ning High, you need to help him then. Su Jingwen's mom obviously knew that her daughter had a very good impression of Xie Wei Zheng. By the way, Mum, I forgot to tell you. That master who sold me the charms seemed to have appeared in Luokang. I might know him. Although Su Jingwen was sure Yimo was that master, but she wasn't 100% sure before she got to see him. Really? Jingwen, if that master is at Luokang, you must invite him over. Su Jingwen's mother was also filled with surprise and joy. But he might just be passing by Luokang, sigh. Su Jingwen thought about Yimo's voice and smile and caressed the 2 coarse beads on her bracelet, seemingly lost in thought. 3 days later, Ning Qingxue went back to U State. She just stayed there for 2 days and then went with a tourist group to relax. With Li Mumei's observation, Lan Yu knew what her daughter was thinking and could only sigh. When she came back, perhaps she would go back to her old life. Originally, she thought without the harassment of the Song family, Ning Qingxue would soon return to her former self. However, Lan Yu was disappointed, she still seemed to be depressed. Perhaps it was good for her to go relax. This time, she went to a proper tourist organization. Although she wanted to relax by herself, she knew the world was far from as safe as it looked ever since she went to Flowing Snake. God State Tourism was the biggest and most appropriate tourism company in U State and it was quite famous throughout the country. What was different to other tourism companies was that this tourism company decided pretty much all the locations and designed the route. One specialty was adventure. This company had a lot of wealth and had safety guarantee. This was because they had their own helicopter. The only thing was that it was too expensive. However, this price was irrelevant for rich people. Since they had a lot of safety assurance, it was normal their prices were a bit high. although Ning Qingxue wanted to go to Tibet, but this company had no plans recently to go to Tibet. Their plan was to go to Shennongjiao. Due to their power and large crew, although their prices were many times more expensive than others, many people still chose this company. There were 22 people altogether going to Shennongjiao this time. Most of them were the elite of the job market, and some were entrepreneur bosses. However, there were only 7 females including Ning Qingxue. The tour guide was a girl called Kui Lin. She was in her 20s and looked very lively. She was articulate when telling about the stories and had a vibrant display of body language. After they went to the top of Shennongjiao, they didn't go to Shennong sacrificial ground. Instead, they went to a forest to seek the footprints of savages. This was one of the set journeys. Although it was said to find savages in the forests, the tourists knew that it was just a saying to attract tourists. The most enticing was the 3-night stay in the forest untouched by human activity and watch the morning mist in the forest. Even with safety measures, there were too much unpredictable things in this prehistoric forest. The tourist company couldn't take them too deep and just stayed on the outside. Perhaps Ning Qingxue was too pretty, so many young men offered to carry her bag when they were climbing hills in order to start a conversation. However, Ning Qingshue's was not too hot nor cold. She only occasionally spoke to the 2 girls beside her. Most of the time, she didn't really talk and just carried her bag and walked. It was as though she didn't come for a holiday but to walk. After some time, everyone knew her personality and didn't bother her. Chapter 192, Strong Enemy. Chapter 192, Strong Enemy. Yimo searched for large amounts of information online and, after comparing them, locked 2 locations. One was the Yundu Valley, and another was Shennongjiao. Yimo found out that the chrysanthemum at Shennongjiao was more expensive and precious. The place it grew was very hard to reach for normal people even if they had a helicopter. It seemed the place Han Yang drew was at Shennongjiao. Eventually, Yimo decided on going to Shennongjiao to find the chrysanthemum. Perhaps in this place, he would be able to reach the place Mo Kang and Han Yang was talking about. Of course, Yimo wouldn't go with a tourist group. He knew the flowers were at a cliff, so as soon as he entered Shennongjiao, he went to the No People district. The place was broad but there were countless dangers there too. However, it wasn't hard for Yimo. It was only 2,600 meters above sea level. The 3rd day after Yimo entered the Shennongjiao, he found the chrysanthemum at a cliff. However, the place was not so similar to where Mo Kang drew. Although they were both cliffs, there were no flat ground and the top wasn't too broad either. Just when Yimo was prepared to go down and try a different peak, he heard voices from the middle of the cliff. Yimo scanned his spirit sense down but couldn't find if there were people near. Were there really savages? Yimo did a close study of the geology of Shennongjiao before he came. Other than some no-man lands and dangerous districts, most of the Shennongjiao had been excavated by the country and has become a tourist hotspot. Just when Yimo wanted to go down, the voice sounded again, "It's not here, looks like it's at Kietuo Peak." "Let's go there then, the faster we get it, the better," another voice sounded. It was sharper than the previous one. Yimo heard it clear. 2 people actually climbed down the cliff. Yimo finally found a rope at a corner. He was too bothered with checking if this was the place Mo Kang said that he didn't even notice there was a rope there. The 2 people could climb down such a steep cliff. Even with ropes, it meant that they were pretty good. Yimo just managed to hide himself when the 2 agile men climbed up the cliff quickly. Both of them wore grey clothes. The man who first came up was in his 40s and tied up his hair. He looked like an actor from ancient drama. The man who followed was about the same but had short hair. There was a scar stretching from his ear to his mouth that looked very scary. Kietuo Peak. Yimo thought, were these 2 looking for the same thing as him? He saw the 2 pack things up and took a quick break before rushing down the cliff. Yimo followed too. He was very curious as to what they were trying to find. Yimo didn't know where Kietuo Peak was, so he needed the 2 to lead the way. After following them for a while, he knew these 2 were indeed not bad, at least about the same as Oyu Tanhu. Were they from the hidden sects? The long-haired man suddenly stopped and looked back and around before turning to the other man and saying, "Cha-san, I feel that there's someone staring at us. Do you have this feeling too?" The man frowned and said after a while, "You're thinking too much. No one else know about it other than us. Plus, it's this place, it's normal to have that feeling." The long-haired man nodded. I probably sensed wrong. We should hurry. I don't feel safe until we get that thing. Plus, it was too hard for us to get out this time." The two quickly continued forward. However, Yimo took note. He just got near to them a little and was almost found out by this long-haired man. This guy really had something. After another hour or so, the two finally came to another valley. At the bottom, they quickly climbed up a cliff. Yimo followed without hesitation. Once they reached the top, Yimo immediately knew this was the place he wanted to find. So it was actually called Tuor Peak. Looking at how familiar they were with it, it wasn't the first time they came. The top was a big flat area. From afar, one could still smell the chrysanthemum. However, Yimo's spirit sense immediately noticed that there was already a man in his 30s at the top. His skin was white and had short hair. However, he seemed very ethereal standing at the top. He carried a long sword behind his back. "No wonder I felt I was followed. It was you, Bien Po." The long-haired man sneered. The man called Bien Po didn't expect someone to come so quick and sneered. "It seems your luck is bad. You found out about this news too and was met by me." Then, the man called Bien Po shook his head. Yimo frowned. He really didn't feel worried about this long-haired man and Cha-san, but this Bien Po gave him a feeling that he couldn't see through. He even noticed Bien Po look towards his side. If that was real, then this Bien Po was too scary, even if he didn't know if they were looking for the same thing as him. "Bien Po, our power is about the same. Although you can beat any of us alone, but with us two together, you won't be able to win. How about we work together and split it into 3, 1 each?" This time, it was Cha-san who talked. "1 each, HMPH, you overestimate yourself. Take my fist first." Then, Bien Po stepped forward and launched a fist. Cha-san hummed and returned with a fist. He will make Bien Po know that he was not a coward. Clash, Cha-san actually took many steps back and was stopped by the long-haired man. There was blood in the corner of his mouth. Just one fist and he was injured. "You broke through." Cha-san looked at Bien Po who didn't move at all. He didn't expect Bien Po to break through to the next state. In the entire hidden sects, the amount of people who was able to break through to Earth level could be counted. Bien Po was so young but he already reached Earth level. What was this? "Brother Bien, we admit defeat, the thing is yours. Let's go, Cha-san." The long-haired man saluted with his fist and was about to drag Cha-san down the cliff. Bien Po sneered and pulled out the long sword from behind his back and caressed it. Then, he said, "You know there's red leaf pumpkin fruit here. Do you think you can still go? What do you want?" The long-haired man released Cha-san and pulled out a small axe from behind him. Cha-san, on the other hand, knew that if they didn't defeat Bien Po today, they would probably lose their lives here. He also grabbed the short dagger at his waist. "What do I want? Of course it's your petty lives." Then, Bien Po seemed to fly as his sword sliced towards the two. A gust of blade light spilled encompassing the two. Even Yimo who was meters out felt a frosty feeling. Such an overlord-like sword technique. Cha-san yelled and focused all his energy into the dagger and swept towards that sword veil. His force seemed to be even a little stronger than Bien Po. However, Yimo's spirit sense noticed that his leg was shaking. Yimo sighed. Even if he wasn't scared at all, Bien Po's sword wasn't something he could stop, much less when he was already afraid before the fight. Plus the wound he received before, his situation was dire. Yimo could tell from the momentum of the sword that he was no match for Bien Po now. The long-haired man suddenly threw his short axe and turned to run, completely disregarding Cha-san's situation. Yimo sighed. If the two worked together, perhaps they could fight a few rounds with this Bien Po. However, this long-haired guy ran, meaning that their defeat was inevitable. Cha-san, who was already afraid, saw that the long-haired man felt more worried. His dagger that had some momentum slumbered. Bienpo sneered. His blade light moved down a little and this white ray pierced Cha-San's waist without hesitation. This wasn't it. The blade light turned back and hit the long-haired man's axe. Clank. The long-haired man's axe actually flew back and pierced into the long-haired man's back as though it had eyes. The long-haired man gave a howl and fell to the ground while the handle of the axe on his back wobbled. At this moment, Cha-San split into two parts and died. Then, Bienpo raised his sword and looked. There didn't seem to be a drop of blood on it. He nodded satisfactorily and looked towards where Yimo was hiding and blandly said, "Do I have to invite you out?" Yimo knew he was caught, so there was no point in hiding. He stood up from behind the stone. Yimo knew he was caught, so there was no point in hiding. He stood up from behind the stone. Although Bienpo knew there was a person behind there, he was still surprised when Yimo came out. He didn't expect Yimo to be so young. He looked just in his 20s. "Where are you from?" Bienpo studied Yimo and asked. If the long-haired man didn't say he was following him, he really might not be able to find Yimo. That long-haired guy was a pig brain. How do you follow from the front? The reason he could kill those two so quickly was because he used their fear towards Earth-level masters. If they really fought with their lives, it wouldn't be so easy for him, and he might not even be able to kill them in the end. However, this youth couldn't even be found by those two, so he should be quite strong. Moreover, Yimo was so young that he was shocked. Yimo compared Bienpo's sword technique to the one who used sword at the Yi family mansion. He found that Bienpo's sword technique was on another level. He didn't want to fight someone like him, even if he had to, he didn't want to now. However, he knew that Bienpo said that there was a red leaf pumpkin fruit here. With Bienpo's cruelty, how could he let him go? Would you believe it if I said I came to Shengnongjiao for a holiday? Yimo scanned the surrounding with his spirit sense. It was very hard to escape here. Other than one way down the mountain, there were cliffs everywhere. Bienpo smiled, but his face was expressionless. "I believe you, but that is useless for you. Watch my sword." As he spoke, his sword turned into a gust of white and rolled towards Yimo. Even with spirit sense, he couldn't notice that the sword had sliced towards him. Yimo's face drastically changed. He had to twist his body quickly to barely avoid this sword. The blade sliced where Yimo was standing before and created a deep mark. If this slice connected, Yimo would have been cut in half already. Yimo stood far at the other side of the cliff staring at Bienpo while his spirit sense was focused on his wrist. He didn't expect someone like Bienpo to use sneak attacks on him. Even so, Yimo wasn't annoyed. In his view, no matter what means one used in a fight, one would win as long as they killed the opponent. "Not bad, you dodged that attack." Bienpo was surprised but soon calmed down. After one sentence, his sword swept towards Yimo again. Yimo had focused his attention on Bienpo's movement. Seeing that he attacked again, he knew he was at a disadvantage without a weapon, especially when Bienpo was stronger than him. Even if they had the same power, it would be very hard to defeat Bienpo without a weapon. His only thought was to find an opportunity to dash down the cliff and run. This time, Bienpo sliced 7 times, which connected into one slice, sealing all of Yimo's retreat path. Yimo casually took out Xian Daoist's whip. He was sure that if he didn't have spirit sense, a few of him would have died already. Even with spirit sense, many segments of the whip broke after this round of attack. The remnant of the whip was not much longer than Bienpo's sword. Xian Daoist's whip was a not bad attacking artifact, but it was like grass under Bienpo's hacks. If he didn't have this whip, perhaps Yimo would have lost an arm already. From the start till now, Yimo was suppressed. His clothes had been torn apart by the sword chi, and there were 7 or 8 slashes on his ripped body. It looked very scary. However, Yimo knew that this was only the first round of attacks. Bienpo was too scary. Was there such a difference in one level? If he was still stage 2 now, he would have been long dead. Even now, if Yimo didn't think of a way, death awaited him. Bienpo's second round of attacks still weren't able to kill Yimo. He stopped his attack as his eyes grew cold. He stared at Yimo for a while before asking, "Just who are you? How can you survive under my 7 consecutive strikes? And where did you get your whip from?" Speak. Yimo sneered. Although Bien Po was much stronger than him, he still found something. When Xian Daoist's whip was broken, he found Bien Po's weakness. Bien Po must have just reached earth level. Although his 7 strikes were strong, there was a gap between each attack. This gap gave Yimo a sliver of chance. Without this sliver, even if Yimo had the whip, he would have been killed. Stop wasting time. If you wanna fight, then fight. Yimo calmed his Kai and quickly thought of how he could use his wind blade to get in a surprise attack and then run. Okay, I'll see how long you can last. Bien Po sneered. His long sword changed again, carrying this white light as he charged towards Yimo. Ning Qingxue, what are you looking at? It was night time. The tour guide saw that at a far-off place, Ning Qingxue kept looking at a big rock. Look at this. Ning Qingxue pointed at that huge rock and said worriedly. There are 2 people fighting. What's that? Was there illusions at Shenongjiao? Not right. Stop, Kui Lin said. She saw 2 shadows fighting, but they had just split. They're fighting again. Kui Lin saw the 2 fight. She had been a tour guide for a few years, but she had never encountered this sort of thing. Kui Lin turned and looked at Ning Qingxue. She found that Ning Qingxue seemed to have more attention on one of the figures. She seemed to be quite excited. Kui Lin didn't care but said to herself, if it was at Wu Liang Mountain, I would have thought it was a goddess practicing sword. This is too fascinating. I'll get everyone to come and see. Then, Kui Lin quickly went to call people. Ning Qingxue, however, stared dumbly at the figure on the rock. Her heart was beating rapidly as though it was going to jump out of her chest. She could feel one of them was Yimo. The moves and shape, it was exactly the same as the person of her dreams. Was she thinking too much? If Ning Qingxue didn't also see it, she would have thought she was dreaming, or was it because she yearned for Yimo too much that she had the illusion? Illusion? Ning Qingxue suddenly thought. Were there actually 2 people fighting and the sun reflected it here? The 2 figures on the big rock gradually thinned out until it moved to the side and disappeared. Ning Qingxue's heart continued beating rapidly and quickly took out the telescope on her chest and looked at the 2 figures. She felt that one of them was definitely Yimo. She was actually so sure it was him. Yimo's figure had appeared in her brain countless times, so she knew she wouldn't see wrong. Ning Qingxue didn't spend much time until she was shocked as though she was struck by lightning. On a distant peak, they're 2 obfuscated figure fighting. It's real, it's actually real. Yimo, is that really you? Why are you here? Ning Qingxue was screaming in her heart. She hoped that she could just teleport to that cliff and help Yimo even if it was throwing a stone at his opponent. However, she knew that cliff was too far from here. Even though the sun was good today, once the mist came up, she wouldn't be able to see there. Ning Qingxue held the telescope but she could only watch from there. She had no way of helping. Although Yimo had found a way to avoid the blade light, after the 3rd round, there were more slashes on his body. Other than a few whips, Yimo couldn't even make a threatening attack. Yimo's whip had just turned into a handle. There were blood trickling down his chest to his waist that slowly dampened his pants. Yimo's face was getting pale. He knew that if this continued, the next round of blades would be his end. However, this Bien Pose was not only scarily strong in his attacks, but his defenses were rather strong too. After 3 rounds of attacks, Yimo couldn't even find a place to attack. Yimo knew he only had 1 chance. If he wasted it, then he would be dead. Bien Po also breathed heavily. His clothes were also ripped by Yimo's whip. A few whip marks could even be seen clearly. You're a rather strong opponent, but even so, this day next year will be your remembrance day. Bien Po didn't mind the light wounds on him at all and attacked again. Yimo suddenly threw the hilt of the whip to Bien Po and jumped as though he was jumping off a cliff. You're asking to die. Bien Po saw that Yimo dared to make a forced escape and sneered. His long sword turned into a white ray that struck towards Yimo, not even bothering with the hilt Yimo threw at him. Chapter 194, Shocking Battle. Chapter 194, Shocking Battle. Bien Po saw that Yimo couldn't dodge and was about to be cut in half by the sword, but just as the sword was about to hit. However, Yimo suddenly dropped down as though he didn't charge straight but was free falling. Such amazing control, being able to do this in mid-air, even Bien Po was amazed. But even so, he didn't go easy at all. His sword turned 90 degrees without a trace and cut down towards Yimo again. Yimo had to admire Bien Po for his sword technique. He held back some power on each sword so he could change moves at any time. "I'll let you guys die together." Bien Po saw that the place Yimo landed was where the long-haired man lay. He sneered as his sword attacked fast. At that moment, Bien Po froze. He found that Yimo disappeared. His sword stopped and Yimo used this opportunity to escape. He used this technique for Daoist Xian, but he wasn't sure whether it would work against Bien Po. When Bien Po noticed he disappeared, he froze for that little bit of time, but that time was enough for him to escape. Invisibility artifact. Bien Po immediately found Yimo's location and attacked him again. Despite using invisibility to escape this certain death sword, the blade light still slashed a deep wound in his back. Before Bien Po attacked him again, Yimo threw the short axe in his hand out. "Small trick." Bien Po sneered. The moment he saw Yimo charge towards that long-haired man, he guessed that Yimo might use that axe. As he expected, Yimo's axe flew over towards his shoulder. Bien Po sneered. This young man wanted to cut his right arm off. This guy had completely overestimated himself. This axe still had a howl to it. Obviously, Yimo wasn't very good at projectiles. But soon, Bien Po noticed something weird. The frosty wind with the axe was a bit shocking. He couldn't understand how did a simple axe carry such frosty wind. But in that moment, the axe already came to his right shoulder. He didn't even think and turned his sword to deflect the axe. He wanted to do what he did to the long-haired man. However, what he couldn't understand was that before the axe reached his right shoulder, it suddenly turned and attacked his left shoulder, but its momentum was a lot weaker. "Idiot." Bien Po sneered once again. Ordinary masters at projectiles knew how to make them turn midway. It was with the way one used inner chi. To him, Yimo obviously was not familiar with it because when the axe turned, it became so much slower. Even if the speed didn't slow down, it would be impossible for him to be hit, much less when it was slowed. Bien Po wanted to use his left hand to grab the axe, but he felt something was wrong. His right arm was cut broken by some unknown projectile, and that wasn't it. This unseen frosty wind didn't stop and sliced towards his waist. Not good. Bien Po immediately retreated and, at the same time, threw out the axe while picking up his broken pace. There wasn't any stopping between these movements, that's how fast he reacted. Yimo didn't have time to sigh that he didn't cut Bien Po's waist since the axe was flying over. The same time he dodged the axe, Yimo knew that as long as he didn't kill Bien Po, he wasn't out of danger. Even without a hand, it would still be very easy for Bien Po to kill him. He calculated everything and even used the axe to cover his wind blade, but wasn't able to cut Bien Po's waist off. From this, it could be seen how strong the other party was. Luckily, he aimed for the arm first, otherwise, Bien Po could have easily seen through if he aimed towards his waist right at the start. When Bien Po retreated to the cliffside, so did Yimo. He was very angry having his arm cut off in a strange way by an insect. He grabbed his long sword with his left hand and didn't talk. His sword spun around and was going to encompass Yimo again. Yimo kept his spirit sense on the sword. Soon, he felt relieved. Although Bien Po's left-hand sword technique was very good, it was far from his right hand. It was the same sword light, but Yimo clearly captured where the sword was. Yimo didn't even think and grabbed towards the back of the single-bladed sword. At the same time, he focused his Kai wanting to control the sword. Even though his left hand wasn't as good as his right hand, if Yimo let Bien Po use his sword technique, he would still die. Bien Po didn't expect Yimo to be able to grab the back of the sword. He sneered and was about to gather energy to pull back the sword and cut Yimo from the waist, but at this time, a huge power came from the sword's back. Yimo actually jumped out of the cliff and pulled him out too. Bien Po wouldn't let go of his sword at all and twisted the sword. There was a huge power and Yimo immediately let go. "You want me to fall off the cliff with you? Keep dreaming. I won't even let my sword go with you." Bien Po twisted in mid-air and before his breath of inner chi finished, he dashed towards the cliff again in mid-air. Yimo sneered. Although he was falling, he raised his hands at the same time. Multiple wind blades sliced towards the space between Bienpo and the edge of the cliff. As soon as Bienpo reached the edge, he felt multiple frosty winds coming at him. He remembered how strong it was and didn't think before turning around and raising his sword to block it. Not good. As soon as Bienpo dodged those frosty winds, he realized he wasn't on the cliff but outside it. His inner chi was exhausted after dodging the projectile, so it would be too hard for it to bring him back to the cliff. Bienpo started to fall rapidly. Even so, he wanted to use his sword and stop on the side of the cliff. However, Yimo wouldn't let him have it his way. Although he was falling too, he had wind controlling technique and was in a much better situation than Bienpo. He kept attacking Bienpo until he didn't have enough inner chi to climb up the wall. Then, Yimo threw a few fireballs at him. Although it didn't reach him, Bienpo's face changed drastically. If it was on the ground, those few fireballs wouldn't be more threatening than a few bricks. However, he had nowhere to exert force and could only see the fireball come at him. "I didn't think I would die here," Bienpo yelled furiously. He threw his long sword out. Boom! All the fireballs landed on Bienpo's body. Bienpo howled and his entire body disappeared in the fireball. The slowly falling body immediately fell down like a cannonball disappearing from Yimo's eyes. Although he fell, his sword still flew towards Yimo. Yimo's kai was almost used up, so he could only barely avoid to get his vitals hit. The sword still passed through his back. Yimo, who was already blooded, immediately started to bleed like a fountain. If he didn't dodge this at the last minute, he would have probably been killed already. But even so, Yimo felt dizzy. Luckily, this sword dragged him to the edge of the cliff. In the fuzziness of consciousness, Yimo didn't even think and just grabbed onto what he could. Rip! The vines couldn't seem to bear Yimo's weight and just slowed him before he continued falling. Yimo bit his tongue and reached for things to grab on the cliff. He would grab anything he could, but these only slowed his speed and didn't stop him from falling. Ning Qingxue saw that the two figures fell down the cliff and was shocked. She could no longer hold the telescope as it fell down and wobbled on her neck. "Here, quick, I saw it here." With Kui Lin's voice, more than 10 members of the tourist group came. "Where? Where are the people fighting?" one young man asked immediately. Kui Lin looked at the huge rock in shock. After a while, she said in shock, Ning Qingxue and I both saw it. There were two figures fighting on this rock. Why did it disappear so quick? By the way, Ning Qingxue, you were always here. When did it disappear? I think your eyes flashed. Do you think this is the home of a goddess at Wu Liang Mountain? One of them immediately joked. Although Kui Lin was a tour guide, she was very competitive and quickly said, I really saw it. If you don't believe me, ask Ning Qingxue. Seeing that everyone was looking at her, she took a while to react and pointed at a distant peak and said, I seem to have saw people there. I want to go have a look. Seeing that everyone was looking at her, she took a while to react and pointed at a distant peak and said, I seem to have saw people there. I want to go have a look. It seemed to be due to Ning Qingxue not wanting to talk much, but no one doubted her words. After a while, a man in his 40s said, Don't think about it. It may seem not far to you, but it's a long journey to walk there. Plus, this is a no-man's land. We're just in the outskirts. The no-man's land of Shennongjiao is very dangerous, so it's best if you don't go in. What danger is there? I will go have a look. A youth in his 20s heard Ning Qingxue's words and wanted to show off. He ran a few steps forward, turned back and said, It's only some time. Shennongjiao is no longer the same as before. They say there are savages, but which one of you saw? Arg! This youth was originally just joking, but when he wanted to turn, he felt the bottom his foot was empty as he fell down. Luckily, he reacted fast and grabbed the rim of the hole that appeared out of nowhere. At this moment, a few people reacted and came to help pull him up. This youth looked at the pitch-black hole. He was scared, sweating. Half a beat later, he said still shakily, If I fell down, I would have lost my life for sure. Not good, retreat. There are more places cracking open nearby. Another man found that the ground was cracking at where people were standing. The people were frightened and retreated. Just when people retreated to the edge, the holes that cracked open rumbled and suddenly, a much larger black hole appeared in front of them. There was a murmuring sound from the hole, making people's bones chill. It was pitch black looking inside, and nothing could be seen. It was as though the mouth of a giant. "What is this?" A woman in her 30s looked at this hole. She was speaking with a shaky tone. "It should be the sky pitch of Shunnong-jia. It's said that there are lots of these in the no man's land. There are also mist regions. These places are where you can't come out from. I didn't think we would encounter it." "Retreat quickly," the middle-aged man from before spoke again. Hearing his words, everyone retreated. Ning Qingxue also followed everyone to the side of a tent in fear. Finally, people gasped sighs of relief when they went back to the campsite. "I actually encountered the sky ditch. This is too coincidental." "What was that murmuring sound?" people asked as soon as they went back to the tents. "It's not a coincidence. There are many of these at Shunnong-jia. There's pretty much no living if you fall in one of those. And those murmuring sound, I suspect it's due to wind circulating inside," the middle-aged man said seriously. The youth who almost fell in finally caught his breath now that everyone was talking. He said, "Almost lost my life there. No wonder there are so many people who have gone missing at Shunnong-jia. We're just at the outskirts. If we go in, 80% chance we'll lose our lives." "PFTT, didn't you just say there was no danger but just time-consuming?" Someone retaliated immediately. This youth lost his face and said, "It seems I just know too little." At this moment, Kui Lin also came over with a bad face. "The tourism company just notified us to get out and cancel the plan at the no man's land." Surprisingly, no one objected. Everyone was scared by this experience and felt adventure was not such a simple thing. The 20 or so people packed their bags and heard an even sharper howl from the ditches. This definitely wasn't made by the wind. Everyone looked at each other. After a long while, the middle-aged man said, "Leave quick, that sound seemed to be coming over here. There are too many unknown dangers in Shunnong-jia. Let's go out first." No one objected and ran outside quickly. Although it was dark, but people ran quite fast. They didn't take much time to get out. When everyone came out of the no man's land, they gradually calmed down. "Count the people, we should go to the nearest tourist spot," the middle-aged man said. Although Kui Lin was the tour guide, she seemed a bit nervous and started to count people. 21, we're missing one." Kui Lin's voice was shaky. Obviously, she knew what one person missing meant. The middle-aged man immediately said, "Let me count, 1, 2, we're indeed missing one." Everyone looked around to check who didn't come out. "Call the police, we can't go back in, it's too dangerous." Zhong Qiong didn't come out. People immediately realized who was left behind. The young guy who stepped into the ditch. The middle-aged man immediately found out who Zhongqing was. How come it had to be him who didn't make it? Was it because of the sky ditch? Someone had asked the question no one dared to ask. The people immediately sunk into silence. No one brought up to go back and look for Zhong Qiong. This thing seemed eerie. "I think Zhong Qiong might be scared and lost his way running outside," the middle-aged man said something even if he didn't really believe it. "This many people didn't get lost but he did." Kui Lin worriedly said, "What do we do now? Do we go back and look for him?" No one replied. Everyone was scared of the sky ditch. No one had the guts to go back in to find someone. Wait for the rescue team. No one wanted to go risk their lives for a stranger. Even the middle-aged man went quiet. After all, what just happened was too terrifying. Ning Qingxue followed them quietly to the nearest tourist spot. When everyone went in the hotel, the rescue team had went in. There were 2 tourist groups that followed the rescue team. Ning Qingxue finally understood the dangers of Shunnong-jia. She even wanted to look under that cliff, but now, it seemed that before she got there, she would have lost her life. This wasn't something that could be done with courage. Sometimes, power was needed, and she didn't have that power now. She could no longer calm down not being able to see if that person was Yimo. She came out to relax and hid Yimo's figure from her mind in the depths of her heart, but now, she felt her mood was even messier. Yimo's figure kept swinging around in front of her eyes. The moment he fell from the cliff became clearer and clearer. Did she think too much and thought of someone else as him? Otherwise, why did he go to that place? Ning Qingxue thought of Yi Mo's small medical case. Perhaps he was gathering herbs there. Kui Lin was still quite anxious. It was the first time someone has gone missing when she was a tour guide. Kui Lin, I want to ask you something. Your company has a helicopter. Can it be rented to save others? Ning Qingxue, however, came to Kui Lin and asked about this. Kui Lin shook her head and said, the company rarely mobilized the helicopter. Renting it is impossible. It isn't a simple thing. They needed to verify there is a target and then apply for a permit. Otherwise, the helicopter can't be mobilized easily. Ning Qingxue had understood. To be honest, the helicopter was just a way of making people feel safe. It was useless when something really happened. With this occurrence, no one had the mood to play. The tour group went back to U State the next day, but Ning Qingxue didn't go back with them. She went back to Ninghai. She knew it was a dream to go back to that cliff with her own ability. Plus, she wasn't even sure if that person was Yi Mo. Perhaps she thought about Yi Mo so much that even a figure was recognized as Yi Mo by her. Even if she really went and that person was Yi Mo, he wouldn't be alive falling from such a high cliff. Although she really wanted to ask for a helicopter, but she couldn't even say what person she was saving. If only Kai Wanqing was here, her father would be able to help. The main purpose of going back to Ninghai was to confirm if the person she saw was Yi Mo. Although she wasn't sure if Yi Mo would come to Ninghai, she still wanted to go look at Yi Mo's school. It was because this was the time to get the graduation certificate, so perhaps Yi Mo would come back for it. Plus, she wanted to ask Su Jingwen about some things. Ning Qingxue went back to Ninghai and saw that flower in the pot was growing very well. She felt relieved. It seemed Xu Wei looked after this grass quite well. But soon, she noticed something different. She saw that there were many small buds next to the grass. Who grew that? No, they were the same breed as the grass she grew. It just didn't look like it was growing very well. The moment she saw them, her mood was excited again. Did Yi Mo come back? Ning Qingxue felt her breaths were desperate. Chapter 196, Bottom of the Cliff. Chapter 196, Bottom of the Cliff. Ning Qingxue suddenly charged into the room. The room on the east side still had its door closed. Ning Qingxue had calmed down now. She felt she was getting crazy. How could Yi Mo come back? When that bead saved her life, she even felt she was getting further and further away from him as though they weren't in the same world. Ning Qingxue carefully opened the room. There was some dust there. She sighed and started to clean up. She would ask about the grass buds when Xu Wei came back. Ning Qingxue packed her things up. Xu Wei hadn't come back yet. She was in an annoyed mood and wanted to walk outside. She subconsciously walked to the street where Yi Mo was selling fake medicine. Although the streets were still busy and the sky wasn't dark, the businessmen had started to gather. Ning Qingxue bought another golden cake and stood where Yi Mo had his stall. She sat down as though feeling Yi Mo's mood when he sat here. He must have been thinking if only there was a customer. Come have a look, recipe passed down from ancestor, cures all illness, headache fever, internal injury, short-sightedness. There's only what you can't imagine, nothing I can't cure. Yi Mo's voice was still there, but where was he? Ning Qingxue bit down on the golden cake. It was still the from same store made by the same person. But today, the golden cake felt bitter. Was it missing something? Ning Qingxue stood up. She prepared to go see Su Jingwen tomorrow and then go to Ninghai University. At this moment, her phone rang. It was Su Jingwen. Qingxue, did you come back to Ninghai? Su Jingwen's tone was very crisp. She seemed to be in a good mood lately. Did Mumei tell you? I was preparing to come see you for something tomorrow, Ning Qingxue said subconsciously. She just got back to Ninghai today. Only Li Mumei knew. Now that Su Jingwen also knew, Li Mumei probably told her. Su Jingwen immediately replied, yeah, where are you? I'll go to your place, I have some things too. Ning Qingxue didn't wait long at a cafe before Su Jingwen arrived. Qingxue, why do you look so emaciated? What happened? Su Jingwen thought about the questions she was going to ask. In her memory, Ning Qingxue cared a lot about her appearance, but now, her bleakness could be easily seen. Just what happened to her? Ning Qingxue shook her head and said after a while, "Nothing, I just want to ask you one thing. You once told me that you bought the charms from a master, do you know how to use it?" Su Jingwen looked at Ning Qingxue in surprise, but she still answered, "Yes, I've used quite a few. But now, I know who the person who sold them to me is." "Is it Yimo?" Ning Qingxue suddenly stood up. Su Jingwen looked at Ning Qingxue in shock. "It's him, but Qingxue, how did you know?" "So it's true," Ning Qingxue murmured before sitting down again. Her eyes drifted off. "By the way, you're with Yimo, he would teach you," Su Jingwen said saltily, but soon, she changed into a lighter tone. "Is Yimo really not a Luokang?" Ning Qingxue shook her head but didn't speak, as though she was thinking about something. At this moment, a tall youth walked into the cafe. Su Jingwen quickly stood up and waved her hand. "Wei Zheng cousin, this way." The youth walked over and immediately saw Ning Qingxue, who was frowning. He felt his brain was blasted. He thought of Lin Daiyu. There was actually such woman in the world. He had always thought Jingwen was extremely pretty, but when he saw Ning Qingxue, he understood that there was someone prettier than Su Jingwen. The girl's pretty brows lightly frowned, and a few messy strands of hair made her seem more innocent. There wasn't even the slightest mark of makeup as she kept her natural face on. However, her face seemed emaciated, and her clothing were very casual. Who was this girl? Yimo woke up slowly and felt his body was full of pain. He immediately wanted to struggle to stand up. Crack, not good, it seemed he wasn't on the ground yet. As expected, he started to fall again. Luckily, the branch he landed on was already near the ground. Splat, Yimo fell to the ground. The ground was covered in thick leaves and mud, so it wasn't very hard. Yimo finally didn't get injured again. But immediately, the pain all over his body woke him up. He was indeed injured heavily. He subconsciously wanted to get some medical pills from his ring, but as soon as he moved his spirit sense, his head was cracking with pain. He almost fainted again. Yimo quickly stopped. What was this? He couldn't use his spirit sense. Was he too heavily wounded? Yimo looked at the wounds on his body. Bleeding had stopped, but there was a fit of dizziness that made him want to drink water. Yimo sat down, wanting to treat himself with Kai. His dantian felt the same as his spirit sense. As soon as he used it, there was immense pain. What was this? Yimo looked at his body. Although there was a lot of bleeding, most wounds had healed itself. It seemed to be related to the herbs he usually consumed. At this moment, not only could he not use his spirit sense, but he also couldn't use Kai to treat himself. If he continued like this, he would die at the bottom of this cliff. The two wounds that didn't heal were the long slash on his back and the one on his waist. It could be said that this sword saved him too. Although he was more heavily injured due to this sword, if Bien Po didn't throw it out, he might have fallen into a puddle of meat. It was due to this sword that brought him near the edge of the cliff. He could keep grabbing on things, and that saved his life. Luckily, this was the Shunnong Jiao. If it was somewhere else, the cliff wall would be barren and he would still die. Yimo looked at the long sword not far away and grabbed it over. He used it to support himself to stand as he studied the bottom of this cliff. It was grey everywhere and he couldn't see much far. He thought and decided to find a safe place to treat his wounds first. If his power recovered, then he could still go up this place. Yimo didn't think he would come to this situation just for some herbs. He was almost killed by that Bien Po. Other than getting his sword, he realized the power of a real earth-level master. However, other than that, he got nothing and had a body full of wounds. Ancient martial arts could be this strong at the earth level. Yimo was sure that even if he was stage 4 Kai gathering, he couldn't say for sure if he could beat this Bien Po. If this wasn't the cliff where he fell and if he didn't use all sorts of calculations to drag Bien Po down the cliff with him, then he would also be dead. No wonder these people didn't want to go to the mortal world. They could cultivate ancient martial arts to this state, and that was only elementary stage of earth level. If he was a tertiary stage earth level, or even a heaven level master, how scary would that be? Just when Yimo stood up and didn't even move, he felt danger. There was a crunching sound behind him. Yimo didn't even turn back and sliced behind him. PSH, a snake the size of a beer bottle had its head sliced off by Yimo. The blood shot high into the air from its neck. Such a sharp sword. Yimo looked at the long sword, there wasn't any blood stains on it. It was indeed a good sword. He turned around and looked at the snake and his face turned serious. The snake was already 3 meters long. Even if it didn't have poison, he would die if the snake went around him. Yimo endured the stench and drank some snake blood. He felt a little better. Then, he took the long sword and started to pave the way. This was a swamp, if he sunk in, he would still die. Yimo moved very slowly. He knew that a place that had no human signs for most of the time wasn't a good place. He just needed to look around at the white mist and knew that this place wasn't safe. There were some bones of animals scattered around. Yimo carefully avoided them. As expected, as soon as Yimo avoided it, a black shadow darted like lightning towards Yimo from amongst the bones. Before this black shadow reached in front of Yimo, that stench was already unbearable. Yimo sneered. Even if he couldn't use Kai, he couldn't be bullied by animals like that. He swung his sword and the black shadow made a sharp howl. It left behind a furry tail and a few drops of blood. In the blink of an eye, it snuck back into the swamp. It had the tail of a cat. Yimo probed it with the sword but couldn't tell what attacked him. Ning Qingxue noticed the youth's impolite stare and frowned. Su Jingwen noticed it and quickly said, "Cousin Wei Jing, this is my friend Ning Qingxue." "Qingxue, this is my cousin I told you about, Wei Jing." Ning Qingxue nodded. If she didn't still have more questions to ask, she wanted to leave. "Hello, I'm Xie Wei Jing, Jingwen's cousin. It's a pleasure to meet you." Wei Jing also noticed his impoliteness. He immediately smiled and extended his hand to Ning Qingxue. He thought that Ning Qingxue probably wasn't from a rich family judging by her clothes. He was really happy to meet a girl as pretty as Ning Qingxue. Ning Qingxue frowned and just drank the coffee that was just handed to her. Xie Weijing took his hand back awkwardly. He didn't expect this girl to be so rude. No matter what, since she was Su Jingwen's friend, she couldn't treat him like that. He kept his smile but it was quite forced. Su Jingwen quickly said, "Cousin, what do you want to drink? I'll order for you." Anything." "Jingwen, I have a ball with my classmate at night. Do you want to go?" Xie Weizeng came today to ask Su Jingwen to the ball. He then looked at Ning Qingxue. He thought it would be good if he could invite both of them. Su Jingwen knew Ning Qingxue's personality. She would treat her cousin the same even if he was Heat Mayor's son, much less just a student from America. She also knew about Ning Qingxue's other things. She ignored Song Shuowen, the young master of one of the 5 big families, much less Xie Weijing. She didn't even ask Ning Qingxue and said, "I'm not going, I still have some business tonight." "Jingwen, how can you not go? If you don't go, I won't even have a dance partner, that's too embarrassing." "Jingwen, you must help your cousin, you need to go," Xie Weijing quickly said. Su Jingwen shook her head again and said, "Cousin, you know I don't like to dance. Plus, I've never danced with a guy, I think I'll pass. Plus, you're so handsome, would you be scared no one would dance with you, eh? Jingwen, you used to always stick with me, but this time I come back, you just try to help me with my company. You even rejected my invitation to a ball. You really make me lose face. I feel you have changed a lot." Xie Weizheng sighed. Su Jingwen laughed. "Cousin, you're thinking too much, I'm still the same me. I just don't really like that sort of place, plus, that was when I was young. I'm old now, so I can't be like before. I'm very happy you can come back to start your company." There were a few times that Ning Qingxue just wanted to ask, then she would get up and leave. However, she wasn't done today, and it wasn't too suitable for her to go now. She felt this Xie Weijing was very annoying. Even if he wanted to talk to his cousin, couldn't he do it after she was done? He knew she was with her friend but still came. This guy was really impolite. Little did she know that she was also impolite in his eyes. Xie Weijing no longer had a face full of smile when he first came in. He was rejected in handshake, and he was also rejected by his cousin. He was quite unhappy. Now that Su Jingwen said that, he stopped the topic, took out a red box, and handed it to Su Jingwen and said, "Jingwen, I ordered this for you." "What's this?" Su Jingwen looked at the exquisite box and asked. Xie Weijing's smile returned to his face. He looked at Su Jingwen and smiled. "You'll know once you open it." Su Jingwen was really confused and opened the box. There was an exquisite bracelet. The beads were very bright, and it could be easily seen that each bead was expensive. "Bracelet?" Su Jingwen repeated. Xie Weijing smiled. "Yeah, I saw that the bracelet you had seemed quite shabby and there were only 2 coarse beads, so I made one just for you. You must have not gone shopping for a long time, wear it and see." Su Jingwen smiled beautifully, closed the box and said, "Cousin Weijing, thank you very much for giving such a beautiful bracelet. This is nothing, as long as you like it, try it on." Xie Weijing saw Ning Qingxue take a look at the bracelet for a while and then stared at her. He smiled and knew that Ning Qingxue must have liked this bracelet too. He would get her one later as well. Su Jingwen's smile was a bit forced and could only say, "Cousin, I'm already wearing one. I'll take yours and wear it perhaps later." "Jingwen, your bracelet looks really coarse and there are only 2 beads on it. It really doesn't match your hand. Just change one, I feel this new one can match you. Come, try it." Then, Xie Weijing picked up the bracelet and passed it to Su Jingwen. Ning Qingxue saw that Su Jingwen's bracelet only had 2 beads as well. That meant she had something happen to her as well and used up 1 bead. She was a bit disappointed. If Su Jingwen really didn't want the other 2 beads, she would take it. Now, it seemed that Su Jingwen came to her due to the jade beads. "But cousin, I really like the current one, I don't want to switch now." Su Jingwen saw that it was too hard to reject his fervor, so she could only speak the truth. Xie Weijing, who thought Su Jingwen was embarrassed to take it, finally understood. Su Jingwen really didn't want to switch. Thinking about this, his face got awkward. As though seeing this, Su Jingwen quickly said, "Cousin, let's not talk about this now, I'll call some desserts. I still haven't ate yet. By the way, Qingxue, what do you want?" Before Ning Qingxue said anything, Xie Weijing continued, "Jingwen, tell me the truth, who gave you the bracelet? Is it very precious?" Su Jingwen glanced awkwardly at Ning Qingxue once, although she felt her cousin shouldn't have asked that question here, but since he did, she could only answer, "Yes, a friend gave it to me." "Then is it much more precious than the one I gave?" Xie Weijing started to feel this indescribable feeling of discomfort, but he still wanted to ask things clear. Su Jingwen hesitated and looked at Xie Weijing's bracelet and said after a while, "Perhaps it's a bit more precious, but..." Su Jingwen didn't know how to explain it to Xie Weijing. She said Yimo's bracelet was more precious, and it really was. However, Xie Weijing misunderstood Su Jingwen's intentions. He thought that what Su Jingwen meant was that the person was much more important than him. Thinking about this, even though he was magnanimous, his face still grew bad. Su Jingwen's immediately discerned the annoyance on her cousin's face and quickly said, "Cousin, don't think too much, I'm really just used to the bracelet in my hand, I don't want to change it for now." Xie Weijing suddenly smiled. His face returned to normal as he suddenly said, "Cousin, the person who gave this to you is your boyfriend, right? When did you have a boyfriend? I didn't even know, bring him next time and introduce us." Hearing Xie Weijing's words, Su Jingwen quickly waved her hands. "Cousin, don't say random things, he's not my boyfriend, just a friend that we can get along." Then, Su Jingwen also subconsciously looked at Ning Qingxue. Although she knew their relationship wasn't good, she still didn't want Ning Qingxue to misunderstand. However, Xie Weijing smiled plainly. "You said you don't like dancing and have never danced with a guy. Last time at your birthday, you seem to have danced with a guy. Did he give you this bracelet? And, you say you don't like guys in your car, but can you be sure the person who gave you this bracelet hasn't rode in your car?" Su Jingwen's face didn't have the smile before. In her memory, Xie Weijing was always the big brother who protected her. But now, he was investigating her. She couldn't let this go, and he was talking to her in such tone. For the first time, she felt the cousin she hadn't seen for so many years wasn't the same cousin. Sorry, Jingwen, I was too emotional. But you would even reject a ball invitation. You're letting them laugh at me. I came back to stay at Ning Hai this time intentionally, so I think you should understand. Xie Weijing could no longer care about Ning Qingxue on the side. Regardless of whether he was going for Ning Qingxue, he wasn't going to let Su Jingwen pass. Su Jingwen didn't expect Xie Weijing to be this impulsive. He didn't even consider Ning Qingxue on the side. She felt uncomfortable. It didn't matter if he was talking about other people, but he was talking about Yi Mo cousin. You're right. I'm still the same to you, and you're still my cousin in my heart. My mum and I are very happy you can stay in Ning Hai, but did you stay at Ning Hai due to other reasons? And, cousin, it's my freedom who I want to dance with and who I let on my car. Cousin, you seem to have changed a lot. Su Jingwen sighed. She felt this strange discomfort. However, Ning Qingxue stood up. Jingwen, I'm going. I'll call you when I have time. She really couldn't tolerate this Xie Weizheng anymore. Wait. Su Jingwen stopped Ning Qingxue and turned back to look at Xie Weizheng. She said hardly, Cousin, I have some business with Qingxue today. If there's something, we can talk about it tomorrow. Wait. Su Jingwen stopped Ning Qingxue and turned back to look at Xie Weizheng. She said hardly, Cousin, I have some business with Qingxue today. If there's something, we can talk about it tomorrow. Xie Weizheng's face changed but soon recovered a smile. In that case, I won't disturb you, see you. Xie Weizheng walked out of the cafe with a bad face, but after a while, he made a call. Auntie, yes, it's me Weizheng. I want to come over. Yes, there are some things that I can't explain clearly over the phone. Okay, I'm coming over immediately. Seeing Xie Weizheng's car leave, Su Jingwen suddenly realized her words might have been too heavy. Was her cousin angry? By the way, Qingxue, you said you have something to ask me? Did you want to ask how to use the charm? Su Jingwen turned and asked Ning Qingxue. Yes indeed. Ning Qingxue saw Xie Weizheng had gone and sat down again. Su Jingwen said helplessly, Actually, my cousin is a very nice person, he's just used to being a bit dominant. Don't mind him. Oh, let's not talk about this. The charms are actually very easy to use. 4 spirit cleansing charm and fireball, you just need to throw it out and say Lin. As for the body protection charm, just make a little pouch and keep it on you. I don't know about the others though. Ning Qingxue didn't expect the charms were so easy to use. Other than a fireball charm, she also had a body protection charm and 2 evil protection charms. Jingwen, the main things I wanted to ask you about are these. I thought you needed some movements. I didn't expect it to be so easy. If I knew, I would have just called you. Su Jingwen smiled. You and Yi Mo are both at Luo Kang, why don't you ask him to teach you? Remember to ask him to give me some more next time you see him. How do you know Yi Mo's at Luo Kang? And what did you want to ask me about? Ning Qingxue asked curiously. She didn't really believe Yi Mo was at Luo Kang. Su Jingwen must have gotten it wrong. Millimeter, Su Jingwen nodded and took out the bracelet on her hand and said, This is a magical artifact. Yi Mo gave it to me, but I didn't know about it at the time. It's called the 6 Beads of Fortune. It's the most precious gift I have received. Su Jingwen didn't finish, but Ning Qingxue knew what she meant. She also felt the bracelet on her hands and said after a while, Thank you, Jingwen, the 3 beads you gave me saved me once, but I can't return it to you now. I need to go out once. If the beads are still there when I come back, I will return them to you. Qingxue, is the place you're going dangerous? Su Jingwen knew that Ning Qingxue understood the powers of the beads since one was missing on hers too. Millimeter, Ning Qingxue agreed and said after a while, I came back to confirm something and make preparations. The place I'm going in is indeed dangerous. Ning Qingxue didn't lie, she really came back to confirm and ask Su Jingwen about the way to use the charms. And, she needed to prepare some equipment for mountain climbing. At this moment, the scene in which Yi Mo fell off the cliff kept replaying in her brain. She couldn't calm down. Regardless of whether it was him, she couldn't feel calm her entire life if she didn't go and see. As long as she confirmed that person wasn't Yi Mo, she would feel better. But if Yi Mo really fell off the cliff, she didn't know what to do. The moment she met Yi Mo in the desert and he turned to leave, she knew that her heart was taken away by him. There was no other reason. Even though she tried to resist and hide, she couldn't forget about that figure. She once thought she would never truly love someone, but when reality came, she found that she just loved him, and there was no logic to it. Su Jingwen really wanted to ask Ning Qingxue where Yi Mo was, but last time, she said he wasn't at Luokang. If she asked now, it would seem as though she didn't believe her. Her plans of getting back the bracelet also failed. Since Ning Qingxue already said that, she couldn't embarrass herself to ask for it back. Qingxue, in that case, I still have 2 here, I'll give it to you. If you didn't use them when you come back, you can return it to me, Su Jingwen thought and still gave it to her. Since Ning Qingxue used one before, it meant she really met danger before. Ning Qingxue shook her head. No need, I'm already very sorry that I took 3 from you, I can't take more. Qingxue, if the place you're going is very dangerous, you should ask for help and I can help you too. Su Jingwen realized that Ning Qingxue really had something. Ning Qingxue shook her head. She thought about it many times. If that person was really Yi Mo, she couldn't ask for the government. She knew Yi Mo had some power and had strong conflict with the Song family due to her. If she asked other people to help her with Yi Mo, the Song family would get news of this at the first moment. That was not good for Yi Mo. Even if he was fine from falling off the cliff, the Song family would still make him not fine. I'm going, Jingwen, if I don't, never mind. Ning Qingxue didn't explain anything to Su Jingwen. Seeing Ning Qingxue walk out of the cafe in a lonely yet emaciated fashion, Su Jingwen lost herself in thought. What did she mean? She asked her the way to use the charm, did she have them? If she didn't meet Yi Mo, where did she get the charms from? Su Jingwen felt that something in Ning Qingxue's words were wrong, but she couldn't tell what exactly. Ning Qingxue returned to the house, but Xu Wei hasn't returned yet. She sat on the stone board Yi Mo once slept on. It felt cool. She seemed to see Yi Mo walk over. She focused her mind and thought. He slept on this before, and it was really hard on him. He was really dumb. Her eyes then turned to that big tree. Yi Mo also spent many nights there. No matter what, she should go find him. Xu Wei just opened the door and saw Ning Qingxue lost in thought. She said with surprise and joy, Qingxue, when did you come back? Ning Qingxue saw Xu Wei and quickly replied, I just came back at noon. Xu Wei, thanks for helping me take care of the grass for so long. Do you know who planted the other grass? Xu Wei smiled. It's nothing, it's something simple. Yi Mo asked someone to plant them there and told me to look after it. Yi Mo said he needed to go on a far journey. You both really love grass, haha. Ning Qingxue heard this and her face immediately went pale. She had come to the realization that the person who fell off the cliff must be Yi Mo, otherwise, how could there be such a coincidence? Are you okay, Qingxue? Xu Wei just realized that Ning Qingxue was not only fatigued, but her spirit wasn't well either. Nothing, Ning Qingxue smiled and said, I still need to go out a while, please take care of these grass for me. She paused before continuing, if I come back rather late and the grass germs are withered, I will tell my mum not to touch that flower pot. Let the pot stay there. I'm going to rest, I'm tired. Xu Wei looked worriedly as Ning Qingxue walked into the room. She felt Ning Qingxue's words were strange. That flower pot had been there for many years. The house owner didn't move it, so why would her mother move it? Ning Qingxue rested for a night. Since she had made up her mind, she no longer felt lost. She spent half a day the second day and prepared all sorts of tools and things for outdoor survival. Then, she put the body protection charm and evil protection charm in a bag she made and hung it on her waist. Then, she rushed towards Shenongjiao quickly. There were quite a lot of people carrying a big bag like her. Ning Qingxue had been here before and was familiar with the way. She didn't choose other places and went to the place she went with the tour group. This was because she could only see the peak from there. When Ning Qingxue came to the no man's land region, she saw a big board hung outside. There were some tourists on the side. Ning Qingxue could tell the sign was just hung up. It wasn't there when she came. It said accidents occurred, so access was forbidden. She frowned. If she wasn't allowed in, what could she do? She looked at the middle-aged woman at her side, thought, and then asked. The woman looked at Ning Qingshue's clothing and knew she came to Shennongjiao for holiday. She immediately said, I heard a tour group encountered sky ditches there 2 days ago. Then, one person went missing. That night, there was the rescue team that went inside. But now, none of the rescue team had come out and have all lost contact. Now, it's forbidden to go in and they're about to lock down this place. There are people from the army here. Of course, I heard this from others, I don't know if it's real. Ning Qingshue's heart skipped. Of course she knew this was true. She didn't expect none of the rescue team had made it out. Was it really that dangerous? But regardless of that, if the military came in the afternoon and locked this place down, wouldn't she have no chance of entering? She looked around and saw there wasn't much people and planned when she could go in when no one looked. There was no one guarding now, so it really wasn't hard sneaking in. There were people gathered there discussing about the eerie event 2 nights ago. Ning Qingxue, however, carefully avoided them and quickly snuck in, disappearing in the woods. That woman who talked with Ning Qingxue chatted with others and seemed to have remembered Ning Qingxue after a while. She turned around, but Ning Qingxue was gone. Her face was immediately scared pale. The girl behind her was gone, and there was no other way except into the woods. Ning Qingxue quickly came to the place where they set up camp last time. It was an open space and it was in the middle of the day, but Ning Qingxue had a frosty feeling. Ning Qingxue quickly came to the place where they set up camp last time. It was an open space and it was in the middle of the day, but Ning Qingxue had a frosty feeling. She subconsciously shivered. The dead silence made her skin tingle. She remembered there used to be bird humming here when they camped here, but now, it was just dead silence. If it wasn't for Yi Mo, she wouldn't come here a second time no matter what. She carefully walked over to the campsite. Not far ahead was the sky ditch. The large hole was still there, and there were no marks around. However, Ning Qingxue felt a sudden frosty feeling coming at her as though something was trying to grab her. Ning Qingxue was so scared that she didn't dare to move. She realized that it seemed to be blurry ahead. The evil repellent charm near her chest spread a warmness which dispersed quick. Ning Qingxue seemed to have heard a sharp scream. It was the same scream they heard that day. Then, she felt that approaching frosty feeling disappear, and so did the tingling of her skin. The misty environment also seemed to have cleared up. Is it really useful? Ning Qingxue subconsciously touched it. Although she didn't know what happened just then, she felt it was related to the charm at her chest. The sky ditch was still the same, but just without that frightening feeling. Ning Qingxue took a deep breath and continued forward, avoiding the hole. A shoe appeared in front of her, giving her quite a scare. She quickly avoided it. It was a military shoe. Was it from the rescue team? Ning Qingxue didn't dare to keep thinking. She had the feeling that something was constantly looking at her but afraid to close in. It should be due to the evil repellent charm. Thinking about this, Ning Qingxue didn't dare to linger around and quickly ran towards the cliff. After running out a few kilometers, Ning Qingxue just realized that her clothes were torn up. However, there was still that almost indiscernible feeling that she was being watched. She suddenly turned around and her skin tingled again. She looked nervously at a place. She felt that thing was there. That feeling was very strange, not logical at all. But after experiencing all this, she was no longer a non-believer. She held tightly the fireball charm, looked behind her, waved the charm and said, I don't care what you are, but if you dare to come close, I will burn you with the fireball. I will get my husband to eradicate your soul later. Although Ning Qingxue shouted this out, it was just to boost her courage. She didn't know if her feelings were right. Perhaps she was just scaring herself, but this was all she could do. That frosty feeling seemed to have kept staring at Ning Qingxue for a while, but it also seemed to be scared of Ning Qingshue's words and slowly disappeared. Ning Qingxue felt it when that the frigidness disappeared and immediately turned and ran. Despite carrying a big bag and having obstacles everywhere, Ning Qingxue still ran out a few kms in one breath before dropping the bag and catching her breath desperately. What made her feel safe was that frosty feeling finally disappearing and there were birds humming again. She didn't know if she was scaring herself, but perhaps there really was those unexplainable things in the world. She rested for a while before taking out some cream and rubbing it on her skin. Her snowy white skin had marks everywhere. Ning Qingxue rested a while before looking around. This was a valley and a small stream ran by Ning Qingxue. It seemed very poetic, but Ning Qingxue didn't have that feeling at all. She was on high alert. If it wasn't because she could find Yi Mo in front, perhaps she would have collapsed. She drank some water and packed her bag. Just when she wanted to stand up, a black shadow dashed over. The speed was so fast that Ning Qingxue couldn't even react. Stump, the black shadow bumped into a barrier that arose in front of Ning Qingxue and was thrown into the stream. However, it quickly crawled out and looked at Ning Qingxue with terror. It turned and ran. If there wasn't the splash of water at the stream, people would have thought it was a blur of the eye. Ning Qingxue realized now that the animal that ran away seemed like a feral monkey. She subconsciously looked at her bracelet. Another bead broke. She didn't even get into the depths and lost another ebad. She didn't know how long she could use the evil repellent charm for. She just used it once, but luckily, she had two. If it weren't for those, she might have died many times just then. Her back sweated and she didn't dare to stay. She ran quickly towards the cliff. She was feeling lucky. If she didn't ask about how to use the charms at Ning Hai, she wouldn't even have made it here. After being ambushed twice, Yi Mo was more careful. He knew there was danger everywhere and anything could happen. He wasn't afraid of attacks but instead afraid of bitten with venom. In that case, he would die since he had no medicine nor could he use his kai. A thorny bush blocked Yi Mo's path. He looked around, but the visibility was too low, not to mention he still couldn't use his spirit sense now. As for what was inside the thorns, he didn't know. However, he knew that if he didn't make a way, he could only retreat. If he couldn't find a safe place to recover, he would still die. He would die either way, so he didn't care and hacked towards the bush with his sword. He had to admit that Bien Po's sword was good indeed. The strong-looking thorns were like hay under his sword. He carefully hacked the thorns aside and made a way. Yi Mo didn't know how large this pact of thorns were, but he hacked for more than half an hour before seeing the other side. It was a cliff face. This cliff face seemed very wide. Yi Mo thought that if he could make a hole on the cliff face and cover the entrance with thorns, then he only needed to find some food and could recover safely. With hope in sight, although he was extremely tired and dizzy, his sword didn't stop at all. When Yi Mo finally hacked his way through, there was a buzzing sound. Yi Mo looked and discovered there were tens of huge wasps charging at him. The wasps hid in the thorns. If they didn't move, they wouldn't be seen at all. Each one was the size of a fist. He didn't need to look to know that it was pretty much one life gone if he was stung. Plus, tens of them charged at him. Yi Mo's sword turned into a veil of blade images. Although his sword technique wasn't as good as Bien Po, it wasn't hard for him to make a veil of sword images. It was just that his body was too weak now. After a while, none of this group of wasps ran away as they were all killed by Yi Mo. Yi Mo coughed and subconsciously looked around. There only seemed to be these wasps. He let out a gasp of relief and shook as he almost fell over. However, he used the sword to support him and stopped wobbling. A putrid stench came from behind him. Yi Mo immediately knew it wasn't good. He was scared of being coiled by an anaconda the most, but it came. He only noticed it when the stench was behind him. Yi Mo charged forward and swung his sword back. However, he had another fit of weakness. He couldn't even hold up the sword in his hand. The hack and slash before had used up his energy. It was just a brief moment and a cold stench, and he was already coiled. The snake didn't bite him but was trying to strangle him to death. Yi Mo also felt himself suffocating. His head started to grow dizzy drastically, but he knew that if he fainted, he would die for sure. He bit down on the tip of his tongue and spat out a mouthful of blood. He forcefully twisted the sword in his hand, using all of his might to lever it to the outside. There was more sound around Ning Qingxue. Although she was still by herself in the forest, Ning Qingxue wasn't as scared as before. It was as though the chiming of the birds were much cuter than the dead silence near the sky ditch. There was more sound around Ning Qingxue. Although she was still by herself in the forest, Ning Qingxue wasn't as scared as before. It was as though the chiming of the birds were much cuter than the dead silence near the sky ditch. Due to the animal attack, Ning Qingxue only rested for a little while and took out the telescope to look at the distance. Although she was closer to the cliff, she couldn't see as clear as she could before since the mist covered everything. Ning Qingxue didn't dare to linger, she already wasted a day's time. If something happened to Yi Mo, she wouldn't know what to do. In the forest, other than some open spaces, most places seemed dark and eerie. She was scared that if she lingered on, that terrifying thing would chase her. Luckily, the evil repellent charm would spread some warmness from time to time, making her not too afraid of the dark surrounding. Ning Qingxue didn't seem to feel fatigue trekking in this primal forest. She just kept walking, knowing the direction of the cliff and not caring about the rest. She was also thinking. She didn't know if it was due to Yi Mo saving her last time or because she was tensed up mentally that her stamina seemed a lot better. Luckily, Ning Qingxue didn't encounter peaks that were too high. Although her luck was good, she still collapsed in fatigue after the second peak. When she looked at herself, her clothes were tattered. Her jeans were ripped, and her coat had holes everywhere. Now, Ning Qingxue knew that she prepared a lot of things for survival but not clothes. It was dark now. If it wasn't dark, she didn't feel much walking, but once it was, she started to worry. She subconsciously felt the evil repellent charm. One of the had disappeared for no reason. There was only one left. She immediately knew that she used one up without her even knowing. It seemed that there were a lot of strange things spying on her on the way. If it wasn't due to the charm, she might be in more danger. Thinking about this, Ning Qingxue didn't dare to stay. She ate some food and took out a mine light. She continued forward like this in the dark. In less than 2 hours, another black shadow darted onto her back. She was concentrated on walking that she didn't even know the body protection charm had repelled the black shadow away, and her bag was even torn by the thing. She didn't even notice her bag getting lighter and lighter. She only knew that she had to keep walking. She was afraid that once she stopped, she would feel scared about the deadly silence and darkness. When it was just dawn, Ning Qingxue flipped her messy hair. She didn't even believe she could walk for an entire night. Something supported her spirit, perhaps it was fear, perhaps it was Yi Mo. She took off her bag. She even complimented herself for walking a whole night while carrying such a heavy bag. She didn't encounter any of those sky ditches. Although she still couldn't see the cliff in this place, she was sure it wasn't far. She also knew that although she walked for so long, she didn't actually travel far. Most of the time was wasted on small hills. She was prepared to eat something and took her bag off. That was when she had a big shock. Other than some ropes, there were just climbing equipment. There was a big hole in her bag. Most of the food, water, and medications had fallen out. There was just 2 bottles of water and a bag of biscuits left. She felt her pocket and realized her phone was gone too. After being dumbfounded for a while, she thought about her situation. She didn't dare to go back and look for them. She didn't even dare to look back, she knew would feel scared. She felt the charms on her chest, even the body protection charm was gone. She didn't even know when it disappeared. The remaining evil repellent charm was a lot more withered. She looked at the bag and knew that if it wasn't for the rope, the rest of the climbing tools would have fallen out. She quickly cut off a bit of the rope and tied up the bag. Although she was extremely tired, she didn't dare to stay there and rest. When the first ray of sunlight shone into the forest, she finally felt relieved. Those things that made her frightened disappeared. At least, there was no more of those strange howls at night. Ning Qingxue quickly walked to a high point. When she wanted to take a look through the telescope, she realized she had walked to the bottom of the mountain. At this moment, she wanted to cry. With her own hard work, she walked a whole night through this horrifying primal forest. She remembered clearly that this was where Yi Mo fell. She had thought about it countless times and wouldn't be wrong. She didn't want to go through the unknown things in the forest again. Breathing the morning fresh air, Ning Qingxue started to find ways to enter the bottom of the cliff. However, She looked for 2 hours and realized there was no entrance. The only way to the bottom of the cliff was to climb up the cliff and go down from there. Ning Qingxue returned to the bottom of the mountain. Luckily, it wasn't hard to climb from here as the place was slanted. She didn't know if Yi Mo came up from here. Ning Qingxue really couldn't understand why Yi Mo would go up from here and fight with someone. If she didn't see it with her own eyes, she wouldn't believe it. There were a few peaches at the mountain road. They were obviously immature, but she was hungry, so she picked some and ate it. It was bitter. She never had this, but in order to give her energy, she had to eat it. She ate another half pack of biscuits and finally felt recovered a little. Then, she continued. She knew she was supported by her spirit, and once she fell, there would be no way for her to get up again. At this moment, she was sure her body was much better than before. It was definitely related to Yi Mo's treatment that night. If it wasn't due to that, perhaps she wouldn't be able to make it here even with her determined spirit. Although this peak wasn't steep, it was still very hard for Ning Qingxue. She put all the tools on her waist and started to climb carefully. Yi Mo and the 2 martial artists could go up easily, but Ning Qingxue had to go up step by step. Starting from 7 in the morning, she climbed till 2 p.m. before reaching the peak. The scene almost made Ning Qingxue vomit. 2 people were dead, cut into 4 pieces. But soon, Ning Qingxue saw the place she stared at before with her telescope. She was sure that Yi Mo fell from here. She walked to the edge and looked down. There were layers of white mist. She couldn't see the bottom. She shivered. Would he still be alive falling from here? Her rope was 100 m at most. This cliff seemed to be about 1 kilometer tall. How could she get down? If she didn't get down, what was the point of coming here? Did she have the courage to return from where she came? Ning Qingxue just thought about this now. She never even thought about a way of getting back. Was she going back? If Yi Mo was no longer alive, what would be the point of her going back? Ning Qingxue shook her head and put aside these thoughts. She looked at the 2 dead person and no longer had the fear she had before. Ning Qingxue walked to a body and picked up a small sword. She found in joy that this body had a huge bag beside it. She opened it and it was full of rope. She quickly pulled it out and now realized that it was made from a fiber she had never seen before. It was very thin, but when she tested it, it was very sturdy. It was even sturdier than the rope she prepared. She looked at the big loop and realized perhaps it was 1 kilometer long. At the end, there was a metal hook. Ning Qingxue gasped a sigh of relief. Without this rope, she could only climb down from here carefully, but she didn't even need to climb to know that it would be death. This cliff was too steep. Even with the rocks and sticks sticking out, it would still be highly likely for her to die. Ning Qingxue carefully secured the rope on a rock and tested it before tying it to her waist. Then, she grabbed the tools and slided down the cliff slowly. It was much faster going down the cliff but also more dangerous. Ning Qingxue didn't know what this rope was made of, but it wasn't slippery at all. She didn't have gloves since she had already lost it on the way. She had only slid down 200 meters and already felt the skin on her hands rip. It was much faster going down the cliff but also more dangerous. Ning Qingxue didn't know what this rope was made of, but it wasn't slippery at all. She didn't have gloves since she had already lost it on the way. She had only slid down 200 meters and already felt the skin on her hands rip. Even so, Ning Qingxue didn't dare to relax. The pain from her hand made her focus more. She slid down another 200 meters and suddenly felt her hands turn soft and weak. She had to find a slightly larger rock and rest on it. Her arms were soft and sour, but she knew that if she couldn't reach the bottom in one go, she wouldn't be able to keep up. She looked at her palm, it was red. Her flesh was exposed to the open air, but she didn't feel pain now. It was as though her hand was numb. She caught her breath and took out the remaining biscuits. She finished it all and drank all the remaining water before continuing sliding down. Ning Qingxue didn't know how long she slid down for. When her arm was too sour to move, she rested for a while before continuing. She even celebrated that she had resting spots on this cliff. Otherwise, she wouldn't be able to stay out for so long. The sky was getting dark. Ning Qingxue estimating that she had been down nearly 1 kilometer, but she still didn't reach the bottom. When she got to the end of the rope, she froze. The rope wasn't long enough. She looked down, it was still white mist. She couldn't see the bottom, but she had nothing to go down with. She continued before due to her determination, but once she stopped now, she felt quite dizzy looking down. Did she really come from up there? If the rope wasn't long enough, she could only keep going down. She could slide down from so high, but it would be impossible for her to climb back up. She stopped on top of a rock and felt lost. She pulled the rope on top. She didn't know what to do next. Would she connect her own? What if it wasn't long enough as well? If only this rope was 200 meters longer. She looked at the top, which could no longer be seen. She subconsciously pulled the rope, hoping that it was just caught somewhere, but she knew this was impossible. She came from above after all. Just when she was helpless and was prepared to connect her 100-meter-long rope, her ropes suddenly loosened. Her heart skipped a beat and she looked at the rope. It was rolling down. She immediately realized that the place she secured her rope on had loosened. She immediately stuck herself to the cliff wall. She was thinking that if that big rock was brought down too, she would be dragged down the cliff and die. A huge rock fell from the top not far from Ning Qingxue. The wind it brought blew up her hair. When Ning Qingxue reacted, the huge rock had fallen to the bottom and made a heavy sound. Ning Qingxue subconsciously looked at the rope on her waist. It was still very loose. She rejoiced. That meant she would arrive at the bottom soon. Thinking about this, Ning Qingxue took off the rope from her waist, secured it on the rock, and started to slide down. She just went down 20 meters and saw the bottom. There was only a few meters left. She felt relieved. She actually saw some clothes hung on a branch. It didn't seem to happen long ago. Was that Yimo's clothes? She only thought about Yimo and got excited. Her hands softened and could no longer hold the rope. She fell down like that. At that moment, she thought, was she going to succeed or plummet to her death? Good thing was she knew Yimo was here. When she landed, she knew that even if the bottom wasn't covered with leaves, she wouldn't die since the ground was very soft. She finally arrived at the bottom. Ning Qingxue carefully pulled out that short dagger and looked around. Other than the ragged cloth, she didn't see Yimo and slightly felt relieved. It was dark now, but the moonlight was good. However, at the bottom of the cliff, there was only very fuzzy moonlight. Despite so, she could still see everything clearly. Although she still had some light from her torch, she didn't want to use it. She picked up the dagger and walked a few meters. There, she saw a long snake. It was cut in half. The wounds were from not long ago. Ning Qingxue froze. At that moment, she wanted to cry. Yimo was really here, and he didn't die. But soon, she knew it wasn't that safe here. Since there was that snake there, it meant there was more. She didn't have Yimo's power. She had used up all her charms except for the fireball and the bead. Soon, she saw some footprints. Although it was quite dark, she could see them clearly. Was it Yimo? Ning Qingxue focused her mind and suppressed her excitement. She followed the steps carefully, and after walking out another 10 meters, the only bead in her hand glowed as repelled a black shadow. At this moment, she fuzzily saw a black shadow that looked like a cat. It didn't seem to have a tail. After it was repelled by the bead, it didn't run but kept staring at Ning Qingxue as though it was going to charge again. Ning Qingxue could only hold her dagger and stare at it. She knew she didn't have much power, and this black shadow wasn't something she could stop. Now that her only bead was gone, the only thing she could use to attack was the fireball. The black shadow was no different than the thing she encountered at the sky ditch. She could only see 2 eerie-looking green eyes. If the black shadow didn't attack her just then, she would have thought it was just 2 eyes staring at her. Even so, her skin startled to tingle as she got goosebumps, but she didn't have any other way. Looking at the horrifying eyes, Ning Qingxue could no longer endure the standoff with it. She immediately threw out the fireball and yelled Lin. Blast! The sound the fireball made in the silence was scary. Under the fire, the black shadow dashed away again and disappeared. Ning Qingxue froze. She just used her fireball like that. She didn't think it would really work. Although she knew the other two charms could be used, it wasn't so straightforward in her eyes like that. She just froze for a bit and realized that it was her chance to run. If that black shadow came back again, only death awaited her. The only thing she had now was a dagger, and that was to boost her courage. With the brightness caused by the fireball, Ning Qingxue soon saw a thorny brush. There was an obvious path ahead. Did Yi Mo make that? She didn't even think and started running, charging into the thorny path. At the end, there was a foul stench. Ning Qingxue quickly opened her mind light, and the scene in front of her eyes almost scared her to death. Yi Mo laid in a blooded pool with a big snake. Ning Qingxue quickly walked up and helped Yi Mo up. At this moment, she saw that the snake was probably cut into multiple pieces by Yi Mo's sword. She felt his chest and learned that there was still a pulse. Finally, she was able to feel relieved. If Yi Mo really died, she didn't know what she would do. Yi Mo was her spiritual support. It was because he was here that she had such courage and determination to come here. If Yi Mo wasn't here, even if she had the courage to live, she would go crazy here. Plus, she didn't have the courage to live. Ning Qingxue struggled and pulled Yi Mo to an empty space near the cliff wall. She looked at Yi Mo in her arms and noticed that he was full of wounds like her. A few of them was very deep. She immediately started crying, not knowing what to do next. After a long while, she calmed down and rubbed her eyes. She carefully pressed Yi Mo's chest. She didn't know if this could wake him, but she had no other way. Yi Mo sliced the snake and actually fainted after relaxing. He fuzzily felt that someone was pushing his chest, so he subconsciously opened his eyes. Ning Qingxue? Yi Mo yelled out in shock. How was Ning Qingxue here? Was he dreaming? Hearing Yi Mo's voice, Ning Qingxue was like struck by lightning. Her movements stopped as she stared at Yi Mo in a daze. After half a beat, she rushed into his arms and started crying. All the fear, loss and loneliness were in the cries. Yi Mo looked at the Ning Qingxue, who had marks all over her body with extremely shriveled hair and messy clothes. He seemed to have understood something, but he just didn't know how she knew he was here. He opened his mouth and subconsciously put his arms around her. When he wanted to ask her something, he found she had fallen asleep in his arms with tears rolling down the side of her face. Yi Mo struggled and found that he was still powerless. It was probably because he exhausted himself too much. He carefully caressed Ning Qingxue's hair. It was very messy, but it still smelt nice. Yi Mo struggled and found that he was still powerless. It was probably because he exhausted himself too much. He carefully caressed Ning Qingxue's hair. It was very messy, but it still smelt nice. He didn't know how Ning Qingxue could arrive here. No one knew he came. If it was Han Yang, he wouldn't feel it strange, but he knew that even if Han Yang knew he fell off the cliff, she might not come. Even if Ning Qingxue knew he fell, how could she find this place? Shennong Jiao wasn't really dangerous for him, but it was too dangerous for Ning Qingxue. It was a miracle she could reach here. Yi Mo really couldn't understand what supported her to come here. He felt her back and now realized that not only was her ligaments full of wounds but so was her back. How much pain did she go through to come here? Yi Mo held up her hand. It was a blooded mesh. There was not a patch of good flesh. Ning Qingxue seemed to be hurt in her dreams and frowned, but she still didn't wake up. At this moment, Yi Mo actually felt pain in his heart. He knew that Ning Qingxue had a good impression of him and might even be in love with him. He could tell by how she went to the desert last time. If Ning Qingxue went to Flowing Snake to repay her gratitude, then it wasn't that simple when she went to the desert. Now, she risked her life to come to the bottom of the cliff. Even if Yi Mo's heart was stone cold, he was touched by her actions. He once thought Ning Qingxue was just a pretty rich girl who was arrogant and thought they could never be in the same world. But now, he knew that he didn't completely understand this wealthy girl. Underneath her cold expression hid a fiery heart that was obstinate. Other than his master Luo Ying, who would treat him like this? It seemed he was too harsh to her before. Yi Mo felt her hair and remembered the words she said that night. I really want to call you husband, but I can't say it. I already married Yi Mo. That box is his wedding gift to me. Don't separate me with that box. There's a grass that I left for Yimo in the yard. If he comes, give this phone to him as well. If not, never mind. He thought about the moment when he left her in the desert, that disappointment and yearning in her eyes. It seemed that she had a lot to say. He remembered the blooded silver heartgrass and the small medical case that she hugged even when she was about to die. Was that love? Yimo lost himself as he thought about this. At this moment, the moon was high up in the sky, shooting down faint rays on Yimo and Ning Qingxue that made everything seem so tranquil. The morning sun couldn't completely shine into the bottom, but still a few rays passed through the mist. A wild crow's quack woke up Ning Qingxue. Yimo. As soon as she wanted to get up, she felt a pair of arms around her waist. Her clothes were tattered, and Yimo's arm was over her half-naked body. Ning Qingxue blushed but felt warm at heart. In these few days of terror, she only felt safe in Yimo's arms. She felt a fit of hunger. Why did Yimo still not move? Ning Qingxue just realized this. What happened to Yimo? She started to panic again, but soon, she discovered that Yimo just fainted again and was just asleep. He still had breathing, but his lips cracked heavily. He's thirsty. No, he probably lost a lot of blood. Ning Qingxue quickly got up and put Yimo in a comfortable position before standing up. She should find some water for him. Now, she regretted drinking all the water. She should have saved it for Yimo. However, she forgot that if she didn't take it, perhaps she wouldn't even make it here. Ning Qingxue walked over to the snake that was killed and picked up Yimo's sword. She just realized this snake was more than 6 meters long. She really didn't know how Yimo killed it. Ning Qingxue put the sword beside Yimo and prepared to walk through the thorny passage, but halfway through, she saw a black shadow dash. Even though it was daytime, she still couldn't see too clearly. She stopped her steps subconsciously as she recalled the eerie green eyes that gave her quite the fright last night. She had no defense now. If she went out, it would be suicide. She walked back again. If she died, what would happen to Yimo? Although she didn't know why the black shadow didn't dare to walk into the thorny brush, but she still used the sword to block the way with some thorny brush. There was a shadow that could dash to her in an instant, and Ning Qingxue no longer dared to go out. Ning Qingxue turned around and examined the place. The thorny brush covered quite a large area, around 5 to 6 acres. She looked at the dead snake and thought if this place was the snake's territory so other things didn't dare to come. As the sun gradually rose, Ning Qingxue saw more clearly. A few meters out, there were a few trees on the cliff face, but the smallest one was 4 meters tall. There were a few green fruits on the tree about the size of eggs. Other than those, there didn't seem to be anything edible elsewhere. She looked at Yimo, who was still unconscious, and started to dig on the cliff face. Ning Qingxue didn't expect the dagger to be so sharp that it wasn't hard digging into stone. She subconsciously looked at it. She picked it up at the top of the cliff but didn't expect it to be this sharp. 4 meters high wasn't easy, but with the help of the dagger, she climbed up quickly. There were 5 fruits altogether. Only 2 was half red, and the other 3 were still green. Although she picked 5, she didn't know if they were edible. She had never seen this fruit before. It looked like peaches, but she ate peaches yesterday and they didn't look like this. She bit one. It tasted sweet and was quite watery. She wanted to eat more after taking a bite, but she knew it was probably because she was too hungry. She resisted the urge to eat the rest and put it aside. After a while, she felt she was okay. This meant the fruit wasn't poisonous. Then, she took the fruit and walked up to Yimo and carefully helped him up. It was just like yesterday. She continued to press on his chest. After a while, Yimo woke up and looked apologetically at Ning Qingxue. He didn't talk. He knew he had lost a lot of blood. If he didn't have a way to recover his kai, the result would be unknown. You're awake, quickly eat something. I think you're a bit dehydrated now. Ning Qingxue gave the fruits to Yimo in joy. Yimo knew that he had to eat something and took one and started eating. Where did you get this? It tastes really good. Have you eaten? Yimo felt he had recovered some and asked in surprise. I've already eaten, I just don't like the taste of the fruit. Keep eating, there's another 4. Ning Qingxue passed the rest of them to Yi Mo. He looked at Ning Qingshue's lips and saw that she really seemed to have eaten. Then, he was rest assured and ate the remaining fruits. But at the fifth one, he saw this one seemed to have been bitten once. He looked at her in surprise. When Yi Mo looked at her, Ning Qingxue quickly said, "I ate a few just then, I don't really like the taste. I just bit one and I don't want it, you wouldn't mind me, right?" Yi Mo seemed to have understood something and smiled. He didn't talk. Although he didn't know how many Ning Qingxue ate, he knew that Ning Qingxue wouldn't dislike the fruit. Although it was a bit bitter, it still tasted pretty good. However, he didn't pass it back. If he didn't recover, it would be too dangerous here. Seeing Yi Mo finish the fifth one, Ning Qingxue finally let out a gasp of relief. She stood up and said, "I'll go out and see if there's anything else that is edible." She just spoke one sentence and wobbled, almost falling over. She knew that she was too exhausted and couldn't hold much longer. Ning Qingxue turned around and gave Yi Mo a smile that she was okay. She wanted to find a place to rest and see if she could climb up to that tree 7 or 8 meters high. However, Yi Mo stood up slowly and held on Ning Qingshue's shoulder. He said apologetically, "Sorry, Qingxue, although I don't know how you know I'm here, but I probably brought this trouble on you." Ning Qingxue shook and slowly turned around. It was the first time Yi Mo spoke to her so gently. She could no longer resist the yearning and nervousness in her heart and rushed into Yi Mo's arms. "Yi Mo, I. Chapter 203, I know. Chapter 203, I know. Yi Mo sighed. Of course, he understood Ning Qingshue's feelings. But at this moment, he finally understood how weak Ning Qingxue was. Her legs were shaking, so it was obvious it was hard even for her to stand. "Qingxue, talk later. If you trust me, listen to me and sit down for a while." Yi Mo carefully helped her sit. I'll listen to you." Ning Qingxue just spoke a few words and almost fell asleep. Yi Mo knew she was too exhausted and now wasn't the time to disturb her rest. He put her down and picked up the sword. He walked to the cliff and saw there were holes dug out by her. It seemed she climbed up here to pick the fruit. Yi Mo recovered some stamina and climbed up to the 7-meter-high tree. There were just 5 egg-sized fruits. Although there were more trees up, Yi Mo knew that his body wouldn't be able to keep up if he went higher. The main thing was Ning Qingxue needed something to eat. After picking all 5, Yi Mo looked up. The higher tree also had 5 fruits. It seemed that this tree can only have 5 fruits at a time. Ning Qingxue said she ate a lot and even disliked it. He knew she was lying to him. At this moment, Yi Mo's heart felt tender towards her. Sometimes, it was really hard to understand a person. If he just left from Ning Hai, then, the two would have no connections. Perhaps he would never know that Ning Qingxue had this side to her. When Yi Mo came back, he saw that Ning Qingxue was already awake and struggling to get up. She was too weak. Yi Mo quickly came and helped her up while taking out 5 fruits and passing it to her. "You eat some. You went to pick the fruit at the cliff face?" Ning Qingxue immediately knew that Yi Mo must have went up to pick the fruit. Yi Mo nodded. "You must be really hungry, eat something first." Ning Qingxue nodded and took 2 and said, "2 is enough for me, eat the rest." Yi Mo subconsciously shook his head and said, "I've already eaten." Ning Qingxue froze for a moment and suddenly laughed. But soon, her eyes went red and looked at Yi Mo for a moment before saying, "I know there are only 5 on every tree. I counted. There are 5 here, you must have not eaten unless you picked 2 trees, but I know you only picked 1, right?" Yi Mo nodded awkwardly and said, "Didn't you say you ate before? But you also gave me 5. Ning Qingxue blushed and bit a fruit before saying in a soft voice, "I ate. Didn't you see 1 was bitten by me? Why did you just take 1 bite? And how did you know I just picked 5 and came back?" Yi Mo was surprised and asked. "I know." Ning Qingxue just spoke those words and didn't explain. Yi Mo knew she only answered the latter question very confusingly, but she didn't answer the former question. "You know." Yi Mo repeated, but he soon understood that he was worried about Ning Qingxue and wouldn't climb higher for more fruits. He would take it back and get it for her to eat, and only then would he feel relieved. Since Ning Qingxue said she knew, it meant that she understood what he was like. Yimo looked at Ning Qingxue, who was still biting the fruit. He had begun to understand why Ning Qingxue chased him all the way here. In her heart, he was trusted to this degree. At this moment, Yimo didn't know what to say. The manner in which Ning Qingxue ate was very serene, making Yimo reminisce the time when they ate together at Ninghai. She has always been like this. She didn't talk much, but there was not much difference with the way they think. Yimo's eyes glanced upon her chest. Her clothes were torn heavily, and her chest also had many wounds. Part of the snowy white of her chest was showing, making Yimo think back to the night he treated her. Ning Qingxue finished a fruit and looked at Yimo, then realized the latter was staring at her chest. She blushed and subconsciously blocked her chest with her hands. She didn't feel annoyed, just embarrassed. Yimo smiled and took back his gaze, but then he suddenly thought, what if her wounds got infected? He was a cultivator and he wasn't afraid of an infection, but what about Ning Qingxue? Suddenly, his heart shook. He finally understood why Ning Qingxue bit the fruit. She was afraid he would be poisoned. It must be that. She didn't know if the fruit was poisonous and took a bite first. Then, she gave it to him. Qingxue. Yimo suddenly called. Ning Qingxue looked at Yimo with confusion. Yimo suddenly reached out his hand and brought her into his arms. Ning Qingxue's heart was filled with surprise and joy. It was the first time Yimo hugged her closely in her arms. Although she was a little embarrassed, she didn't struggle. I'm just a poor person actually. Why are you still like this? You can find someone better than me. Yimo's mouth was held by Ning Qingxue. After half a beat, Ning Qingxue said, because I like you, even if you're that. I don't care, I just want to be with you. Before Ning Qingxue finished, she felt there was something hard sticking against her back. Yimo was touched. And, he was holding a curvaceous beauty like Ning Qingxue in his arms when she wasn't even properly dressed. There was no way he wouldn't have a biological reaction. Ning Qingxue hadn't experienced this adult thing. Although she was talking about Yimo's impotence, she didn't realize what was happening at the first moment. She also grabbed like Yunbing. But as soon as she grabbed, she immediately understood what was happening. She quickly let go and buried her face in Yimo's arms. Her heart was beating rapidly. Although she had never done it, she still knew about this. However, she didn't expect Yimo to be normal, was it? At this moment, she realized that the Yi family wanted to kick Yimo away, and that's why they said Yimo was impotent. He was very normal, yet she thought he was impotent before. That was why she dared to marry and live with him. If she knew he wasn't impotent, would she dare to live with him? Thinking about this, she actually thanked the Yi family. Although Yimo was a bit awkward, he was quite helpless towards something like this. He was a young man. With a half-naked pretty lady in his arms, if he didn't have a reaction, that would be abnormal. He could only say, sorry, that's not something I can control. Seeing that Yimo actually tried to make an excuse, Ning Qingxue was more embarrassed. She could only quietly say, you're bad. Seeing Yimo not reply for a while, Ning Qingxue thought Yimo was angry and quickly raised her head to see Yimo staring right at her. She was startled and immediately put her head back down like an ostrich. She said quietly, I really like it but just not now, after we go back. Yimo's heart skipped. He didn't even hear the latter half of her sentence. His lust fire immediately dissipated. Ning Qingxue was sitting on him, and of course, she knew Yimo no longer was in the mood. She looked at Yimo in confusion. Yimo said apologetically, Qingxue, sorry. Hearing Yimo's words, Ning Qingxue's face turned pale again as she struggled to sit up. Seeing Ning Qingxue's face turn pale again, he immediately knew how much he weighed in her heart. He quickly hugged her. Ning Qingxue wanted to sit up but was hugged by Yimo again. She didn't struggle and wiped her eyes. She didn't talk nor bite the fruit in her hand. It had to come and he couldn't avoid it. Yimo sighed and focused before saying, Qingxue, you treated me like this and I quite like you as well. If there wasn't Luo Ying and I can't reach a higher level here anyways, I might as well live with you for the rest of my life. But sometimes, I really can't do it because there still is a Luo Ying in my heart. If I can't find her, I can't do anything that will betray her. Ning Qingxue looked up and said in confusion, Luo Ying? Who is she? Yimo fell into a long silence. He felt if he didn't say this, he would be trespassing Ning Qingshue's feelings for him. After half a beat, he still said, Luo Ying's was my woman in my past life. Perhaps she's in another world or perhaps she's not far from me, but I can't find her. Qingxue, do you think I would lie to you and make up another girl? Ning Qingxue shook her head and said with certainty, no. If it was before, she would turn away without hesitation, but she had experienced too much. Magical artifact, charms, Shunnong Jiao Sky Ditch's invisible screams. At this moment, Ning Qingxue was no longer the girl who laughed at Su Jingwen talking about charms. She had matured too much. Whether it was experience or her understanding of love, she was no longer the Ning Qingxue before. If it was the her before, she would find people and rescue Yimo through a helicopter. But now, she could realize about the Song family. If it was her before, she wouldn't venture into danger many times by herself for an unpromised love, but now, she did it without hesitation. Thank you, Qingxue, thanks for believing me. Yimo hugged Ning Qingxue closely with gratitude. Then, he suddenly said, I feel Luo Ying is somewhere and I can find her for sure. If it wasn't for her, there wouldn't be me, she cares about me just like you. Yimo didn't talk about what happened and Ning Qingxue didn't ask either. For some things, one only had to understand mentally. However, Ning Qingxue raised her head and looked at Yimo. I know, I'm happy you can understand that I care about you just like her. But can you promise me one thing? You're tuning in to the Celestial War YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.